Warrior Lore. Chapter 227. Whoosh whoosh. There were a total of 9 people, 8 men and 1 woman, all around the age of 20. Their figures landed on the mountainside. The eyes of the 9 people were locked onto a certain spot on the mountainside. There was a faint golden light flickering from within. It should be a blocked cave. However, at this moment, there was a faint golden light flickering in the cave. It might not be too conspicuous during the day, but it was extremely eye-catching in the night. There's an aura fluctuation. Be careful. The eyes of the 9 people were fixed on the place where the golden light was flickering. They clenched the weapons in their hands as cold light fluctuated. Profound chi surged, and the aura radiated and enveloped the surrounding area. Everyone looked at each other and nodded slightly. They reached a tacit understanding and slowly approached. The 9 people's faces were solemn. Everyone had heard that the brat called Du Xiaofu was extremely abnormal. He was definitely not easy to deal with. Boom. Just as the 9 of them were carefully pushing forward, a huge rock suddenly rushed out of the cave like an impact cannon. Everyone be careful. Don't let that brat escape, the leading young man shouted. A fist seal covered in runes immediately blasted towards the huge rock. Bang! The boulder shattered, turning into a large amount of gravel and powder that drifted away. Whoosh! At this moment, a figure suddenly shot out from the cave. He can't escape. A beautiful woman who was closest to him shouted. Profound chi surged, runes bloomed, and a long sword was already unsheathed. Whoosh whoosh! The sword light flashed as fast as lightning, leaving a series of afterimages in the air. Then, a large amount of sword light materialized and shot out, enveloping the figure that rushed out. Whoosh whoosh! This sword technique was not ordinary. The sword light flashed and runes bloomed. Its power was powerful, and it directly blocked the opponent's path, making it impossible for him to escape. Break! With a loud shout, a fist seal wrapped in golden runes smashed over, bringing with it a terrifying shockwave. Layer after layer, the energy of each layer was greater than the last. When it reached the 13th layer, the terrifying power exploded and destroyed the sword light. Boom! Then, a powerful energy wave swept over the woman's shoulder and sent her flying. Poochie! The woman's body flew backward. Suddenly, her face turned pale and blood spurted out from her mouth. Quickly release the signal flare. Let's work together to stop this brat. The leading young man shouted loudly. Just as the woman was injured, his body soared into the air and swooped down. A palm print suddenly shot out from his hand. Terrifying rune energy swept down along with a mighty energy, directly enveloping the figure that had shot out from the cave. Bang! The figure that rushed out of the mountain waved his hand. Light golden talisman patterns appeared on his hand, and then they collided fiercely. Boom! A muffled explosion resounded, and the runes exploded. Energy shot out, and the surrounding mountain rocks were razed to the ground. Ding ding! The leading young man staggered back a few steps. The ground cracked as he staggered. His expression changed a lot. He was dressed in a purple robe and looked to be around 16 or 17 years old. He was none other than Du Xiaofu. Humph! At this moment, Du Xiaofu staggered back. For some reason, a muffled groan came from his throat, as if he had suffered a lot. Chi! At the same time, a young man in the surroundings suddenly released a signal flare. It soared into the sky and exploded high up in the sky. Bang bang! The signal flare exploded, and the sound waves were like thunder. It was gorgeous and dazzling. In the mountains that were enveloped by the moonlight, the surrounding mountains instantly became as bright as day. Not good. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at the signal flare that had exploded high up in the sky. His expression was grave. He never thought that he would be found by the people of the academy at such a critical moment when he was about to break through. It would not be a problem if it was under normal circumstances, but at such a critical moment, not only would his strength be greatly affected, if it was serious, it would be enough to cause him to go berserk. At this moment, he was definitely in great trouble. As the signal flare was released, the people that came did not seem to be in a hurry. They surrounded Du Xiaofu. Profound chi surged, and their auras collapsed, sealing the surrounding space. They are waiting for the others. If we don't break out as soon as possible, our future will be bleak. A faint golden light flashed in Du Xiaofu's eyes. He swept his gaze across the 9 people. One of them had just reached the pulse spirit realm, and his aura was similar to Tai Hu's. He was definitely not below Tai Hu. One of the other 8 had already been injured by him. The other 7 were all at the great circle of the pulse realm, and were definitely very strong. Several young experts stood vigilantly, holding their weapons, ready to attack at any time. However, the leading young man was not in a hurry. Instead, a slight smile appeared in his eyes. He had already released the signal flare. It would not be long before the nearby enforcement team rushed over. At that time, the brat in front of him would not be able to escape. "Brat, my name is Zhu Ding, the captain of the 9th squad of the enforcers. Surrender without a fight, and you'll suffer less. Seeing that you're an unprecedented figure in the academy, come with me. At the very least, I can guarantee that you won't suffer in my hands." The leading young man had been sizing up Du Xiaofu with the help of the moonlight. He had already heard of the various deeds of the legendary abnormal brat in front of him, even Tai Hu had suffered a crushing defeat at his hands. He, who was ranked 98th on the martial roll, did not have the confidence to take down the brat in front of him. Therefore, it was better to wait for reinforcements. If he could persuade the brat to surrender, that would be the best. There's no such thing as surrendering without a fight in my dictionary. Du Xiaofu stared at Zhu Ding. A faint golden light began to flash around his body, and his aura suddenly fluctuated. "Be careful of him escaping. We can't let this brat escape. Just block him with all your strength." Feeling the fluctuation of aura from Du Xiaofu, Zhu Ding immediately said to the people around him. Profound qi surged out from his body at the same time, and his aura tightly locked onto Du Xiaofu. "Break out of the encirclement first. We can't delay any longer." Gritting his teeth slightly, Du Xiaofu knew that he could not delay any longer. Profound qi surged out from the soles of his feet. His body suddenly swept out, and a valiant aura gushed out. He took the lead and swept towards a short-clothed young man on the right, whose cultivation was only at the complete pulsation realm. "Brat, don't even think about escaping," Zhu Ding lightly shouted. As Du Xiaofu made his move, he also quickly swept out, and a fist directly smashed towards Du Xiaofu's back. Swish, swish. The other 6 people surged with profound qi and gripped their weapons tightly. Saber and sword light swept towards Du Xiaofu at the same time, as if they wanted to mince Du Xiaofu's body into pieces. Qilal, terrifying energy burst forth. The light was dazzling, and the aura was vast and mighty. It faintly revealed a dry thunder, and muffled sounds resounded incessantly. When all the energy was about to engulf Du Xiaofu's body, under the astonished gazes of several people, Du Xiaofu's figure suddenly disappeared. Du Xiaofu's figure was enveloped by the numerous attacks, and with unbelievable angles and arcs, he suddenly disappeared like a ghost. Qi. When Du Xiaofu's figure reappeared, he had already used the unfettered ripple steps to escape from the encirclement of the attacks. But at this moment, Du Xiaofu's purple robe had traces of being torn by sharp weapons. There were small tears on his shoulder, and faint traces of blood could be seen seeping out from them. "That brat is on the left. We must not let him escape." Zhu Ding's face changed. He did not expect the rumored freak to be so fast as well. It was so fast that it was terrifying. He immediately took the lead and pounced forward. Shua shua. None of the remaining students were weak, and they were all elites among the seniors of Tianwu Academy. It wouldn't be easy for Zhang Xian to escape from their encirclement. Walala. In an instant, an earth-shattering energy swept towards Du Xiaofu, engulfing a large area. "You won't be able to stop me." A faint smile suddenly flashed across Du Xiaofu's grave face. As soon as he finished his words, waves of runic energy started to fluctuate around him. In the blink of an eye, 10 formation flags were formed in his hands, and they emanated astonishing fluctuations. Chapter 228. You can't stop me. On Du Xiaofu's solemn face, a faint smile suddenly flashed across his eyes. As his voice fell, waves of rune energy began to fluctuate around his body. In an instant, 10 formation flags were condensed in his hands, all of them spreading an astonishing fluctuation. "Oh no, I forgot that this kid is also a talisman master. Retreat quickly. Zhu Ding was the first to change his expression. His attack stopped, and he began to retreat with all his strength. Spirit Storm Array. However, it was already too late for Zhu Ding to discover this. Just as his figure came to a halt and retreated, the 10 formation flags in Du Xiaofu's hands had already shot into the air, enveloping the 9 people with lightning-like speed and trajectory. Walala! The 10 formation flags instantly disappeared in the air. Suddenly, the space fluctuated. The rune light was dazzling in the night sky, and the energy swept through the sky, sending sand and stones flying. When the array appeared, it enveloped a large area of space. The violent energy was like a terrifying storm, whistling and sweeping through the sky, directly enveloping Zhu Ding and the other law enforcement team in the array. Whoosh! After the array was arranged, Du Xiaofu's face turned pale again. He no longer had time to pay attention to the array. Profound qi gushed out from the soles of his feet, and he used the wave-like carefree steps. His body shot out like a sharp arrow, and then he left the mountainside and disappeared into the dense forest. Bang, bang, bang. On the mountainside, Zhu Ding and the other 8 people were trapped in the array. Low and loud muffled sounds kept coming out, and the sound of sonic booms resounded. It seemed that there were already people suffering in the array. Quickly break the array by force. After all, the senior members of the law enforcement team were all extraordinary people. Every one of them was famous among the younger generation in the outside world. None of them were weak. It only took a moment for them to organize a force to forcefully break the formation. Wild winds howled. Within the enormous symbol array, which was covered in energy, a terrifying energy began to fluctuate, causing the symbol array that Du Xiaofu had set up to be on the verge of collapse. Immediately, it exploded with a loud bang, and a low and deep energy sound spread out. Rumble. The violent energy swept out, causing the entire huge mountain to tremble violently. Sand and stones flew, and large pieces of mountain rocks fell down. Pucci. At this moment, Du Xiaofu, who was already in the dense forest, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The destruction of the glyph formation also indirectly caused him to suffer heavy injuries. Swish, swish. On the mountainside, Zhu Ding and a few others rushed out from the spreading rune energy. A few of them were in a difficult situation, their faces pale. Bastard. At this time, Zhu Ding's face was also extremely ugly. He did not expect that under the encirclement of a group of people, that kid actually managed to escape. Woo woo. Not long after the talisman formation was forcefully broken, a large group of figures appeared in the distant sky. They gradually grew larger and larger, bringing with them the howling of the wind that filled the sky. The collapse of the sea of trees caused the sea of trees to rise and fall. Many flying demonic beasts circled over. Whoosh whoosh. In front of the flying demonic beasts, there were 6 figures that were even faster than the flying demonic beasts. They quickly landed on the messy mountainside. They were Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, and the sexy and enchanting tall lady. Zhu Ding. Where's that little bastard? Did you catch him? Bing Qianli landed. His gaze immediately scanned the surroundings. Then, he saw the rather difficult situation of Zhu Ding and the rest. His face slightly changed, as if he had already guessed the result. Zhu Ding's face was ugly. His face was ashen as he said, "That little bastard set up a glyph formation. This daddy here is trapped. He probably can't run far. He's right in front. Chase, quickly chase him. We must not let that little bastard go." Bing Qianli roared, his face ashen as he tightly clenched his fists. He had been toyed with time and time again. This time, he had missed again, causing him to be on the verge of collapse. When he had just arrived, Bing Qianli was still cursing loudly. If he saw Du Xiaofu, he would definitely skin that kid alive. Who knew that he would rush over, but who knew that he would miss again? Whoosh whoosh. In a short period of time, the depressed and furious group of people immediately chased in the direction that Du Xiaofu had left. They all wished that they could raise this mountain range to the ground, and swore that they would definitely dig 3 feet into the ground to find Du Xiaofu. One by one, the furious figures gradually disappeared into the distance. The mountain peak that had just had a shocking commotion regained its calm. Whoosh! Just as the furious figures disappeared into the distance, a purple-robed figure returned and jumped down from a towering tree. Like a ghost, the purple-robed figure lifted a huge rock and once again rushed into the cave. Then, he tightly sealed the cave. The most dangerous place is the safest place. You guys take your time to find him. Inside the cave, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged. His face was deathly pale, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He had just broken through at a critical moment and was disturbed, causing him to almost go berserk. I need to break through as soon as possible, or else it will be troublesome. Du Xiaofu muttered softly, and once again condensed a cultivation hand seal. The profound qi in his body shuttled through his meridians and circulated endlessly around his body. A moment later, Du Xiaofu's body was once again enveloped in a pale golden halo of light. Walala! The mysterious runes on the talisman began to spread and fluctuate. The profound qi leaked out from the pores of his entire body, like tiny pale golden energy snakes shuttling back and forth. The profound qi leaked out more and more, and the pale golden halo around his body also became more and more vibrant. After an unknown amount of time, Du Xiaofu's entire body was enveloped in a golden light, and under the light of a pale golden talisman rune barrier that was tens of meters in diameter. And in this wonderful feeling, Du Xiaofu could vaguely feel that the bones, muscles, internal organs, meridians, flesh, and blood in his body were all emitting waves of comfortable feeling. His body was once again receiving the greatest amount of nourishment, and under this nourishment, his body would become stronger and stronger. Two cultivators who practiced the same body cultivation technique had different cultivation levels, and the strength of their bodies were also different. Every time a cultivator broke through, they would try their best to obtain the greatest benefits from the breakthrough. Among these benefits, there was also energy that could directly allow the body to undergo the greatest degree of refinement. Although Du Xiaofu practiced the cultivation technique of the golden-winged great rock, the principle was the same. Just like two real golden-winged great rocks, their cultivation levels were different, and in terms of the strength of their bodies, there was naturally a difference in strength. Not long ago, Du Xiaofu's chaotic aura was affected because he was at the critical juncture of his breakthrough. At this moment, it was continuously calming down, and finally, it gradually returned to normal. However, during the process of calming down, Du Xiaofu was also on tenterhooks. If he was disturbed at the critical juncture of his breakthrough, it was very likely that it would affect his breakthrough. Even if he was lucky and did not suffer from qi deviation, he might not be able to recover in a short period of time. Fortunately, none of the bad things that came with it happened again. At this moment, Du Xiaofu had almost completely refined all of the energy from the Medicine King's medicinal pellets and the spiritual medicines that he had swallowed. The profound energy that filled Du Xiaofu's meridians became more and more abundant, almost to the point of swelling. It caused the golden talisman mysterious runes to envelop his body, which was sitting cross-legged, to tremble slightly. Compress. After a while, Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed, and the profound energy within his meridians surged, compressing all of it into the divine watchtower. Walala! At the same time, the dazzling golden light from the mysterious runes around Du Xiaofu's body seemed to have suddenly formed a golden vortex and was instantly sucked into the surface of his body. Huff huff! Suddenly, at this moment, Du Xiaofu's aura began to rise violently. Bam! Almost at the same time, the interior of the divine watchtower trembled, as if there was a low, muffled sound. The aura broke through the bottleneck and rose all the way, accompanied by a golden light that bloomed in the cave. After dawn, light shot out from the east. It was like the beginning of chaos, when light and darkness separated and gathered in the sky. Then, the sky was filled with red clouds, the mountains were filled with golden waves, and the red sun and the morning glow gushed out, dazzling the golden light. Within the mountain cave, the golden glow around Du Xiaofu's body was slowly withdrawn into his body. His eyelashes moved slightly before he opened his eyes. He spat out a mouthful of turbid air. A faint golden glow was revealed within his deep eyes. A feeling of fullness filled his body, causing his entire body to have an indescribable carefree feeling. Pulsation stage, Nirvana realm. Sensing the profound energy in his body, Du Xiaofu had a slight smile on his face. He carefully sensed his body, and the profound energy in the divine watchtower became denser and more condensed. The profound energy surged, bringing with it a majestic feeling of power. At this moment, Du Xiaofu also felt that there was a great difference in his physical body that only he could detect. This difference would make his physical body stronger, and when facing an enemy, he would be able to display a greater effect. After breaking through to the Nirvana realm, Du Xiaofu heaved a sigh of relief. His strength had increased by quite a bit, and he now had the ability to contend against the Tianwu Academy's law enforcement squad. However, Du Xiaofu also knew that it would be extremely difficult for him to truly contend against the entire Tianwu Academy's law enforcement squad. Sensing the profound energy in his body, Du Xiaofu estimated that his strength had once again increased by quite a bit. Now, even if he relied on the normal strength of his original body, he should be able to contend against a cultivator at the initial stage of the pulse spirit stage. If he added some tricks, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to deal with those at Taihu's level. It's time to go out. After taking a deep breath, Du Xiaofu stood up. His pitch-black eyes had become even deeper, making one feel as though they were looking at the stars in the sky. There was a faint golden light in his eyes, making him look indescribably bewitching. Chapter 229. The red sun had just risen. Within the continuous mountain range, the mountain peaks were inky blue, the cliffs and precipitous rocks dyed crimson-red by the rays of the sun, gradually turning into an ancient bronze color. Leader, I heard that Senior Qin Lang, Senior Bing Qianli, Senior Zhu Ding, and Senior Du Xiaoman's teams have all suffered losses. That little bastard Du Xiaofu is really extraordinary. Within the dense forest, a youth in short robes, holding a broadsword in his hand, looked ahead warily as he searched. I heard from their team that Senior Qin Lang, Senior Bing Qianli, and Senior Du Xiaoman were even toyed with by that little bastard twice, chasing rabbits for quite some time. A youth in tight robes holding a stick could not help but laugh. In the team of 9 people, the leader was a youth in his 20s. His face was handsome, his skin yellow, and his whole body exuded a sense of power. His eyes were black and bright as he opened his mouth and said, "That brat is quite clever, but he doesn't dare to fight Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, and the others head-on. His strength is probably not that high. If we find that brat, we'll go all out to capture him first." Careful. Just as he finished speaking, the leading youth seemed to have sensed something. With a light shout, his footsteps came to a halt. His gaze swept across the dense forest all around him, and a gust of green Xian Qi also surged out from his body at once. Swish swish. At this moment, the surrounding 8 people's Xian Qi surged at the same time, their weapons unsheathed. Instantly, they formed a circle with their backs against each other, and a terrifying aura exploded outwards. Without a doubt, none of these 9 people were weaklings. Their reactions were quick, and they were very experienced. Chilala. At the same time, the energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings fluctuated, the energy howling, "Above. Not good. It's a talisman array. Retreat quickly." The leading youth shouted softly and abruptly raised his head. At this moment, on top of a towering tree, a purple-robed youth was enveloped in a white divine glow. Waves of strange energy fluctuations linked up with the energy of heaven and earth around him. His hand seals changed and abruptly converged, turning into array flags one after another. I can't retreat. Void illusion formation. The purple-robed young man swooped down, and a total of 12 array flags appeared in his hand. All of them emanated a shocking fluctuation. With a wave of his hand, the 12 array flags immediately swept out and sealed off the area where the 9 people were. Swish swish. The 12 formation flags enveloped the 9 people who were about to retreat with lightning speed and trajectory. Boom. The 12 array flags quickly merged into the space, causing the air in the surrounding forest to violently fluctuate. Runes spread out in the air, mobilizing the energy of the 5 elements runes in the surroundings. Then, a powerful array symbol emerged, causing the space to become chaotic. Waves of strange energy dazzled the eyes of those who looked at it, causing their souls to tremble and stab with pain. Wind and clouds surged in the surrounding space of the dense forest. Glyph arrays appeared, covering a large area with a power that made one tremble with fear. Chila. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, a figure soared into the sky like lightning and quickly broke through the array symbol's encirclement. A terrifying, profound energy fluctuation condensed into an astonishing attack power and directly blasted towards Du Xiaofu. The glyph light was dazzling, and its power was monstrous, as if it could destroy everything. The purple-robed young man's figure had just landed far away from the array symbol. Looking at the attack that was swooping down, he suddenly raised his hand and blasted out a fist that was wrapped in a pale golden light, directly colliding with the attack. Bang! The muffled sound was like thunder, resounding through the dense forest. The vast and mighty energy directly broke the trunk of a towering tree in the surroundings, causing it to collapse with a rumble, causing leaves to scatter all over the sky. Bang! Under the enormous impact, the purple-robed young man took a step back and his body swayed. Chilala. The former's body landed on the ground, and he was pushed back a meter. Then, he raised his head, and on his heroic face, shock gushed out from his jet-black eyes. He stared closely at the purple-robed young man in front of him and said, "You are Du Xiaofu?" The purple-robed young man was Du Xiaofu, who had just broken through not long ago. Not long after leaving the mountain cave, he met this enforcement team not far away. Having just broken through and greatly increased his strength, Du Xiaofu wanted to take the initiative to attack. He quietly approached and suddenly set up a glyph array, but he did not expect this heroic youth to be able to quickly break through the array's encirclement. Peak of the initial pulse spirit stage. His gaze moved as he looked at the heroic youth. Although he was also at the initial pulse spirit stage, his aura seemed to be even more tyrannical than Taihu's. Hearing the former's question, he nodded at the heroic youth and said, "I am the person you are looking for." A perfect 3-star glyph array symbol. Rumor has it that you cultivate both martial and talisman arts. You are indeed capable. The heroic youth looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "I forgot to introduce myself. I am Xiang Tianin, the captain of the 6th Enforcement Team." Du Xiaofu looked at Xiang Tianin and said, "You are also on the martial ranking?" Ranked 89 on the martial ranking. Xiang Tianin looked at Du Xiaofu and then glanced sideways at the glyph array behind him. The expression in his eyes fluctuated as he said, "How about you undo the glyph array? I will fight you alone. If you win, I will immediately leave and will not surround and capture you. If you lose, I will naturally capture you and bring you back. Is that okay? Capture me first if you have the ability. The glyph array will not take their lives, so you do not need to be too worried." Du Xiaofu said, "All right, then I will capture you first." As Xiang Tianin's voice faded, a nearly 3 feet long broadsword instantly appeared in his hand. Boom! With the appearance of the broadsword, a mighty energy suddenly surged out. The broadsword seemed to have a life of its own. Suddenly, the runes on it surged, causing the surrounding energy of heaven and earth to fluctuate and be sucked in. The space around the broadsword formed an energy vortex. The wind whistled in the dense forest, and the sand and pebbles were flying. A terrifying energy was gathering. What a powerful spiritual weapon! Du Xiaofu's gaze was fixed on the broadsword in Xiang Tianin's hand. This broadsword was much more powerful than the spiritual weapon in Lu Tianxiao's hand that he had encountered in Dark Forest Town. It was most likely of a much higher grade. A spiritual weapon. I can feel the aura of a spiritual weapon. Boy, let me eat that spiritual weapon. At this moment, Du Xiaofu heard a young and tender voice. This voice seemed to be transmitted from his mind. Hearing this voice, Du Xiaofu's brows immediately furrowed. He reached into his clothes, and a palm-sized bronze mountain peak stone appeared in his hand. It was the demon stone that had been clamoring to rest after swallowing a spiritual weapon. However, Zhang Qingchun had called this stone a divine stone. "Have you rested well? Why should I let you eat that spiritual weapon? Last time, you already ate a spiritual weapon. What a wastrel." Du Xiaofu said to the demon stone, "It's only a spiritual weapon. Eating that spiritual weapon will benefit me. If you let me eat that spiritual weapon, I will give you benefits. The demon stone's voice still resounded in Du Xiaofu's mind. The young and tender voice seemed to be honest with both the old and the young. Then, it intentionally added, if I help you, the speed at which you break through to the pulse spirit stage will be much faster. I don't want to break through too quickly. If I break through too quickly, it won't be of much benefit to me in the future. Du Xiaofu said to the mountain peak stone. Then, he raised his eyebrows and said, however, I still plan to let you eat that spiritual weapon. Du Xiaofu remembered that his big brother Jin Qingchun had said that his pulse spirit was related to the demon stone. This meant that there was a relationship between them. This relationship was very strange. Therefore, he must study his pulse spirit. If he did not understand it well enough, it would affect his cultivation. It would be best if he could let the demon stone help him understand it. It would be enough to achieve twice the results with half the effort. If he could achieve something with the demon stone's pulse spirit, the benefits would not be inferior to the golden rock cultivation technique. What an arrogant brat! Seeing Du Xiaofu take out a stone and talk to himself as if he did not take him seriously, Xiang Tianin was puzzled. Then, his eyes darkened. He activated his saber art and leaped out. The spiritual weapon in his hand suddenly burst out. Whoosh! The spiritual weapon's saber light slashed down. There was a loud explosion in the air. A powerful saber light swept across the sky. Chilala! Under the broad back of the heavy saber, the aftermath of the terrifying saber radiance spread out. Wherever it passed, cracks instantly spread on the ground. The towering trees that had just been broken in the middle were directly uprooted and cracked, turning into powder. Brat, let's see how arrogant you can be. If you have the ability, then you can take my mountain splitting first. Xiang Tianin's body instantly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. A mighty aura swept out. On the broad back of the heavy saber, the saber light seemed to have materialized and swept out in all directions. Chilala, the space trembled like a bomb. The surrounding trees were uprooted and collapsed with a rumbling sound. In the face of such a terrifying saber light, Du Xiaofu was also quite moved. The strength of this Xiang Tianin was much more tyrannical than that of Lu Tianxiao. Go! At the same time, the demon stone in Du Xiaofu's hand, wrapped in golden light, was directly thrown out. It directly broke through the air and hit the saber light that swept over. Haha, there's another spiritual weapon to eat. The demon stone's excited voice came out. Then, a stream of light flowed out. The golden talisman mysterious pattern spread out. A terrifying aura burst out like a flood. It directly destroyed the layers of materialized saber light with a destructive force. Kacha, kacha. Then, an incredible scene appeared. Within the golden talisman mysterious pattern, the heavy saber in Xiang Tianin's hand emitted a crisp sound like a child eating potato chips. The sound was like the sound of firecrackers exploding, and then, starting from the tip of the saber body directly began to crack. Pieces of the saber body directly disappeared. It was wrapped by the golden talisman mysterious pattern and then directly disappeared. It was incomparably strange and disappeared as fast as lightning. Xiaoyu got up late very depraved. There's no other reason. The more he slept, the more he slept. Then, he overslept, so the update at noon was delayed. Once again, I apologize to everyone. Now, I will continue to work hard to rush the manuscript. I beg for forgiveness. Chapter 230. My Mountain Splitter. How could it be like this? No. Xiang Tianin's expression changed drastically, his body retreating rapidly. However, he could not shake off the golden talisman engravings that wrapped around the blade. In just a short time, the large saber spirit weapon disappeared before his eyes. With the spirit weapon in his hand swallowed up, Xiang Tianin was also greatly affected, spitting out a mouthful of dark red blood. Stormy Wave's palm. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's figure flashed forward like a ghost, the palm print in his hand striking out with the force of a thunderbolt. The instant Xiang Tianin spat out blood, the palm print landed directly on his chest. Pung! A low, muffled sound rang out, and Xiang Tianin's figure flew backwards, crashing heavily into a towering tree, breaking it apart. Vertical cracks spread across the huge tree trunk, swaying and then collapsing. Xiang Tianyin opened his mouth again, spitting out blood. However, at this speed, Xiang Tianyin's body immediately shot up. As an expert ranked 89th on the martial roll, Xiang Tianyin's own strength was unquestionable. Sky-shaking wings. A golden light burst out, and a domineering and fierce chi swept across the sky. It wrapped around Xiang Tianying, who had just been ejected, with a thunderous force. Xiang Tianying's body, which had just been ejected, was sent flying like a stone. Pong pong. Losing in one move meant losing the entire game. Xiang Tianying's body landed heavily in the distance, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake, blood spurting out wildly. In a situation where the two of them were about equal in strength, a single mistake was enough to cause the entire game to be lost, with no possibility of a comeback. Due to the influence and mistake caused by the swallowing of the spirit weapon in his hand, Xiang Tianyin was now being forcefully suppressed by Du Xiaofu. Restriction. As Xiang Tianyin's body crashed to the ground, Du Xiaofu's figure shot out, the runic handprint in his hand condensing, and then landed directly on Xiang Tianyin's body, restricting the Xin Qi in his acupoints. Such a method was not difficult for any pulsating realm cultivator. Xiang Tianying was restrained and could no longer move. His eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu. At this point, Xiang Tianying still could not believe what had just happened. How could he be defeated by Du Xiaofu? You lost, so some things belong to me. Du Xiaofu smiled and took out the Chinquin bag from Xiang Tianying's arms. He continued to search and took out another points card. Under Xiang Tianying's twitching gaze, Du Xiaofu skillfully stuffed the Chinquin bag into his chest pocket. Then, he swallowed the points on Xiang Tianying's card into his own. That was a total of 30,000 points. As expected of an expert on the martial roll, he has so many points. Du Xiaofu's face was brimming with a smile. Then, his figure flashed out and rushed into the large charm array not far away. Bang, bang, bang. Within the charm array, a series of low, muffled sounds could be heard. Then, silence ensued. After a while, the charm array disappeared and 12 formation flags appeared out of thin air. They then turned into dazzling runes and returned to Du Xiaofu's body. Thank you for the gift from the law enforcement team. Du Xiaofu swaggered off, leaving behind a bunch of injured law enforcement team members who were restrained. At this time, all of the law enforcement team members were restrained. Their eyes were twitching and their faces were pale. Their Chinquin bags were forcibly taken away from them, and the points on their points cards were directly reduced to 0. Swoosh, swoosh. Not long after, in the dense forest, the sound of wind breaking resounded. Flying mounts circled in the sky above, and dozens of figures flashed down. The first few people were Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and the sexy and enchanting tall woman. When the dozens of people saw the appearance of Xiang Tianying's law enforcement team, their eyes turned ashen and embarrassed. My Chinquin bag. My points. I've been saving them for half a year. I've been saving my points for 9 months. After the restraints on the law enforcement team members were removed, they were all in pain. Their hearts were bleeding. Bing Qianli spent a lot of effort before finally removing the restraints on Xiang Tianying. He immediately asked, Xiang Tianying, what happened? Did you meet Du Xiaofu? Xiang Tianying nodded. The corner of his mouth was dripping with blood. The pain in his heart was no less than any of the law enforcement team members. He said to Bing Qianli and the rest, I was ambushed by his charm array. My spiritual weapon was destroyed. That Du Xiaofu is very strong, but the scariest thing about him is his strangeness. Hearing this, Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and the rest were all shocked. They were very clear about Xiang Tianying's strength. An entire law enforcement team was wiped out. This was too shocking. Was that kid really just a write-in student? Based on Du Xiaofu's age, even if he started cultivating in his mother's womb, he would not be able to reach such a level. At dusk, the setting sun rolled in the golden-red clouds. It passed through the mountain range and then sank into the dark horizon. I didn't expect Xiang Tianying to withdraw. How could he not withdraw? He was already heavily injured by Du Xiaofu. Xiang Tianying is ranked 89 on the martial ranking. That Du Xiaofu is too strong. He's really abnormal. I heard that Xiang Tiannin's spiritual weapon Mountain Splitter was destroyed. The law enforcement team's points and Qinkuan bag were all snatched by that Du Xiaofu. That brat Du Xiaofu is too savage, too terrifying. When the news came from the back of the mountain, the whole school was shocked. Everyone was stunned. Halfway up the mountain, in a courtyard, Zhu Qing was lying on a bed. His face was as pale as ash and his eyes were blank. Zhu Qing seemed to have not recovered from the shock for the past 2 days. He had not accepted the fact that he was a cripple. Perhaps he was not willing to believe that he had become a cripple at this time. At this time, the sun was setting outside the window. The sunlight shone in through the window. There was a young man standing quietly in the light of the window, shrouded in the multicolored light. This young man had a face that seemed to have been carefully sculpted. He seemed to have a gentle and composed temperament. His figure was slender and elegant, and he wore a fitting dark red robe. His 10 fingers were long and slender, and his entire person carried an extraordinary aura. Don't worry, I will arrange for you to go back. Although you will never be a warrior again, with the foundation of the Zhu family, you will have a much better life than many people. The young man said to Zhu Qing. The curve of his lips was quite perfect. It seemed that he always had a smile on his face. His voice was very calm. Zhu Qing looked at the young man. Suddenly, his blank eyes surged with hatred. His eyes were bloodshot. He said in a shrill voice, "Cousin, I want that boy to die. I want him to die without a complete corpse. I want to grind his bones and scatter his ashes. Let him go. I know what to do. I will explain it to Uncle and Auntie. Otherwise, I won't have the face to see them," the young man said softly. A scarlet glint flashed across his eyes. His appearance and expression gave off a sharp feeling. Walala! At night, in the square of Tianwu Academy, the runes on the huge jade wall flickered. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst forth. The light soared into the sky, illuminating the mountain range as though it was daytime. The bounty board has been updated. Let's go and see what's going on. I wonder who made it to the top 100 on the bounty board. It has been a long time since the last update. There are over 1,000 bounties on the bounty board, and we can find them within the academy. However, only those who enter the top 100 can appear on the bounty board. I wonder who has entered the top 100 of our academy's bounty board. As the dazzling runes soared into the sky, a huge crowd surged out from the various mountain peaks of the academy and headed towards the square. A moment later, the dazzling light on the towering jade wall dimmed slightly. However, it was still shining brightly. Among the 100 names on the jade wall, the 88th name emitted a dazzling crimson glow. The crimson glow was similar to the crimson glow emitted by the first 5 names on the jade wall. Of the first 5 names, the first was Blood Demon, and the second was Du Tingxian. 88th name, Du Xiaofu. It's really Du Xiaofu. That lad actually made it to the bounty board. He killed 2 seniors, crippled 3 seniors, arrested the enforcers, and stole so many Cosmos sacks. It would be strange if that lad didn't make it to the bounty board. 88th, that should be a bounty of 180,000 points. I guess that Du Xiaofu would make it to the bounty board. To think that he really did it. This is truly unprecedented in the academy. When everyone's gazes landed on the 88th name on the jade wall, a commotion broke out. Since he's on the bounty board, that means that everyone can participate in the hunt. Why don't we form a team to hunt him down? That's 180,000 points we're talking about. Even Xiang Tianyin isn't a match for him. What's the point of forming a team? You might even be killed by that Du Xiaofu. Do you think that Du Xiaofu doesn't dare to kill anyone? In front of the bounty board that was abuzz with discussion, the news of this year's nominal student, Du Xiaofu, rushing to the top of the bounty board with lightning speed, immediately spread throughout the entire academy. In fact, this news was gradually spreading throughout the empire. Given Tianwu Academy's standing in the empire, there were definitely many major powers and clans paying attention to Tianwu Academy. Du Xiaofu's name was quietly spreading among the various major powers in the empire. At this moment, the person in question, Du Xiaofu, was hiding in a cave under the moonless and windy night. The entrance of the cave was sealed tightly by a huge rock that was specially polished. Within the cave, Du Xiaofu's hand seals were spreading all over his body. His cosmos sacs were opened one after another, and a small mountain of cultivation materials was piled up in front of him. Thank you, Brother G111, for your reward of 40,000 points. Chapter 231. Martial Techniques, Spiritual Herbs, Cultivation Coins, Elixirs, and so on. I'm rich now. I didn't expect Tianwu Academy students to be so rich. Du Xiaofu held a glowing spirit herb in his mouth like a toothpick and slowly chewed on it. After that, he sorted out the spirit herbs, medicinal pills, martial skills, and other items that were piled up like a small mountain in front of him and put them into his chinkuan bag. You wastrel, shut up. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu seemed to have discovered something. He picked up a rock beside him and threw it fiercely at a palm-sized mountain-shaped rock that was stealthily approaching him. Chi. However, Du Xiaofu was still a step too late. On the mountain-shaped rock, a golden talisman pattern surged out, directly covering the glowing spiritual herb and swallowing it. However, the rock that he threw also smashed into the mountain-shaped rock. Ka. The rock that Du Xiaofu threw turned into fine powder, but the mountain-shaped rock remained unscathed. However, a mournful and tender voice immediately sounded out. It hurts so much. Brat, are you trying to kill me? What do you mean it hurts? Stop pretending. You've already eaten a few of my spiritual herbs, don't push your luck. Du Xiaofu ignored the demon stone and quickly put the spiritual herbs and elixirs into his chinkuan pouch to prevent the demon stone from eating them. So what if I ate a few of your spiritual herbs? Can it be compared to the golden plum you stole from me? The demon stone was unconvinced. It felt that it had not repaid the price. However, just as it was about to steal more spiritual herbs, it realized that all the spiritual herbs and elixirs had already been put into Du Xiaofu's chinkuan pouch. You also ate 2 of my spiritual tools. How do you want to settle this? Du Xiaofu kept the last of the martial techniques and cultivation coins into his chinkuan pouch, then fixed his gaze on the demon stone. The first time, you used me as a shield. I haven't settled the score with you yet. Today, I am also helping you. I feel that with your current strength, it will be very difficult for you to deal with that guy with the spiritual weapon. He is very strong. The demon stone said. On the surface of the stone, there was a faint golden light flickering, faintly discernible. But you asked me to give you that spiritual weapon to eat. What happened to the benefits you promised me? Looking at the demon stone, Du Xiaofu didn't want to talk about old grudges. The benefits were the most important. Don't worry. I will give you something good, but not now, the demon stone said to Du Xiaofu. When was that? You can't lie to me. I'm an honest person. Du Xiaofu had a suspicious look in his eyes. He wondered if he had been tricked by the demon stone. When did you become honest? What a joke. The demon stone's tender voice clearly contained a disdainful smile. After which, it said to Du Xiaofu, you should know that your vain spirit is related to me. That's right. Du Xiaofu nodded. Looking at the demon stone, there was a puzzled look on his face. He asked, actually, I have always wanted to know. How is my vain spirit related to you? You don't know? The demon stone's voice was also stunned. On the surface of its body, there was a pair of eyes that looked like real eyes staring curiously at Du Xiaofu. What do I know? Du Xiaofu was even more puzzled. It shouldn't be. How can you not know? The demon stone's eyes flickered as he murmured. Looking at Du Xiaofu's eyes, he could tell that Du Xiaofu wasn't lying. After which, he continued, you have a unique type of martial vein in your body. It's very powerful and very special. Because of your extremely powerful martial vein, and because I was too weak at that time, your martial vein devoured some of my essence blood, and in the end, it became the vain spirit that you condensed. If I didn't desperately escape, I'm afraid I would have been killed by you. My martial vein is very strong? Du Xiaofu was puzzled. His martial vein was originally a trash martial vein. It was broken. Only after practicing the mysterious technique that could restore martial veins did it start to recover a little. Could it be related to the mysterious technique? Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu stopped thinking about his martial vein. He stared at the demon stone and said, that's right. Where did you come from? Why did you appear in the 1,000 caves? This. The demon stone hesitated for a moment, then looked at Du Xiaofu. Its eyes started to become hazy. It said, "Actually, I don't know. I also want to know where I came from. Every time my strength increases a little, I know more things. Many things are like a dream. I appeared in the 1,000 caves because I knew there was a spirit herb there. Who would have thought that after waiting for 10 years, when the spirit herb finally matured, it would be snatched away by you before I could do anything? I even nearly lost my life. How did you know there was a golden plum in the 1,000 caves? Also, there was a seal there. How did you get in?" Du Xiaofu pondered for a moment and asked the demon stone. The demon stone blinked and proudly said to Du Xiaofu, "I have a special feeling for spirit herbs, spirit tools, and the like. As long as I get close to them, I can feel them. Ordinary seals and glypherays are useless to me. I can directly ignore them." Being able to sense spirit herbs and ignoring seals and glypherays. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly lit up. His gaze fell on the demon stone's body, and his eyes fluctuated. The demon stone glanced at Du Xiaofu and said, "Your vain spirit is related to me. If you can properly comprehend it, you will be able to ignore ordinary seals and glypherays in the future. However, I'm afraid you won't be able to learn the ability to discover spirit herbs. I can also ignore seals and glypherays?" Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly surged with joy. The special expression in his eyes when he looked at the demon stone also faded. "Of course, this is also one of the benefits I will give you. When I break through next time, I will let you enter my spirit seal realm. At that time, you will be able to comprehend everything that I have comprehended. For you, this will be a great benefit. Not many people's vain spirits can be comprehended like this." The demon stone said, "Sounds very good." Du Xiaofu's face revealed a smile. The demon stone stared at Du Xiaofu and continued, "However, in exchange, you have to find me spirit herbs, spirit tools, and heavenly treasures to eat. Only by eating these can I improve the fastest. The higher the level of spirit herbs, spirit tools, and heavenly treasures, the greater the benefits to me. You only want to eat spirit herbs, spirit tools, and heavenly treasures. You dare to ask?" Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's face suddenly became ugly. He said, "I also want to eat spirit herbs, heavenly treasures, and spirit tools." The demon stone glanced at Du Xiaofu and said, "If you don't agree, then let's go our separate ways. At the very most, I will find them myself. If a spirit tool master finds you, he will definitely be interested in refining you into a spirit tool," Du Xiaofu said with a smile on his face. The demon stone laughed disdainfully and said, "Boy, do you think I am so easy to refine?" Du Xiaofu frowned and said, "Even if you are an extraordinary demon stone, there will always be a spirit tool master in this world who can refine you. You will not be any better." The smile on the demon stone's face suddenly froze. It fiercely glared at Du Xiaofu and said, "Then do you think you can protect me with your strength? After I make another breakthrough, I am afraid you will not be as good as me." Du Xiaofu looked at the demon stone and slightly raised his eyebrows. He then smiled and asked, "You just said you can find spirit herbs and spirit tools?" "Of course, but it must be within a certain distance. If it is too far, I can't do it now. The stronger I am, the farther I can feel the distance." The demon stone said, "Okay, I agree. In the future, you will let me understand your understanding and strengthen my pulse spirit. I will find spirit herbs and spirit tools for you. However, you will also have to take me to find spirit herbs. When the time comes, we will split it half." Du Xiaofu said. The demon stone blinked and seemed to hesitate for a moment. Then, it looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Okay, deal, deal." Du Xiaofu nodded his head with a smile on his face. Then, his gaze darkened and he muttered, "I have to find a more secluded place. It seems like I am about to make a breakthrough in the Spirit Talisman Master realm." The next morning, the first rays of the morning sun shone through the sky. In the entire Tianwu Academy, the news of Du Xiaofu entering the 86th place on the Academy's bounty board had spread like wildfire. It was said that when the news spread, many seniors immediately formed teams to search for Du Xiaofu at the back of the mountain. A reward of 180,000 points on the bounty board was definitely enough to move the hearts of the students in the academy. The temptation was irresistible. It was said that many of the top-ranked experts on the martial ranking had also entered the back of the mountain to join the teams searching for Du Xiaofu. Amidst this vast search and the attention of the entire academy, another 2 days passed. However, there was still no news of Du Xiaofu. It was as though Du Xiaofu had suddenly vanished from the back of the mountain. The enforcement team didn't find any traces of him for the past 2 days. The scorching sun hung high in the sky, illuminating the surroundings. In a deep valley, the shape of the valley was slightly different from the other valleys in the mountain range. The surrounding rocks were stacked in layers and were messy, yet majestic and peculiar. On both sides of the deep valley, there were several towering mountains. They were so tall that one would feel dizzy. With the deep valley at the bottom, it was terrifyingly quiet. So, a mouse the size of a palm appeared on a rock on the mountain peak. This mouse was very strange. It was the size of a palm, but it was hairless. Instead, it was covered with earthy black scales. Its small eyes shone brightly, as if it was sniffing around for something. He should be in the vicinity. The innate ability of the earth spirit rat is never wrong. It sensed that lad's aura nearby. Several figures appeared on the mountain peak, and behind them were dozens of young men and women. The ones leading the group were Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, the sexy and seductive tall lady, and the others from Tianwu Academy's enforcement team. Chapter 232. We won't be tricked again this time, right? Qin Lang was a little doubtful. Having already been tricked twice, he really did not have much confidence this time. Don't worry, although the Earth Spirit Mouse's level is extremely low, and when it reaches its peak, it will still only be a Hotian demonic beast. However, in terms of detecting auras, it has absolute talent. As his words fell, Bing Qianli once again placed the 2 badges he had obtained from the cave and the back of the scarlet fire rabbit in front of the Earth Spirit Mouse's nose for it to sniff again. It's been so many days. That kid is already on the bounty list, but we still haven't captured him. If he's captured by someone else in the end, our reputation as a law enforcement team will be completely lost. Zhu Ding said, "Don't worry, if someone else from the martial role gets involved, I believe that someone from the other 3 enforcement squads will definitely come out," Qin Lang said, and then turned to look at the sexy and enchanting tall lady beside him. Besides, Senior Du is still here. As long as we find that Du Xiaofu first, that kid won't be able to escape. Let's find him first. This Du Xiaofu is definitely not easy to deal with. From the current situation, even if we meet him, I'm afraid that we may not be able to do anything to that kid. The sexy and enchanting lady parted her red lips slightly. Every single action of hers seemed to possess an indescribable allure, causing quite a number of young men's gazes to secretly glance at her long and straight legs along the way. Squeak, squeak. Just at this moment, the Earth Spirit Mouse on the rock suddenly squeaked, and then immediately climbed down the steep cliff at the foot of the mountain. Below the cliff, there was a cloud of mist, and in a short while, all traces of the Earth Spirit Mouse disappeared. No wonder we couldn't find that kid no matter how hard we tried. So he hid so well. Hurry down, that Du Xiaofu must be down there. Instantly, dozens of figures released their profound energy and began to crawl down the cliff. The pulse spirit practitioners immediately leapt into the air and directly leapt down the cliff. Within the secluded valley, the surroundings were bare and densely packed with rocks. Above, there was a thick cloud of mist. The area of the valley was not too large, and it was surrounded by towering mountain peaks. In addition to the thick cloud of mist, even if a flying demonic beast flew past, it would be difficult to spy on the bottom. No one would deliberately climb down the high cliff to explore a small valley that was hard to find. This was indeed a good place to hide. Walala. At this moment, a purple-robed youth sat cross-legged on a flat rock. His entire body shrouded in a mystical white light, like a white divine light, as an oppressive aura of aura. If one were to sense it carefully, they would be able to sense that the aura of the purple-robed young man was gradually increasing. Chi. Suddenly, several figures leaped down from the clouds and mist above. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. One figure after another appeared in the valley. Profound energy fluctuated as numerous pairs of eyes immediately landed on the purple-robed youth on the rock at the center of the valley. There's someone here. It's a youth. All of a sudden, all of their gazes trembled. Waves of profound energy fluctuations intensified, and many people immediately gripped their weapons tightly, ready for battle. The sexy and enchanting woman who jumped down from the clouds also looked at the purple-robed youth who was wrapped in a white divine light. Could it be that my eyes are playing tricks on me? When she clearly saw the handsome face within the white divine light that revealed a resolute and sharp will, the fiery woman's eyes trembled in an instant. Her delicate body couldn't help but suddenly tremble. She was so shocked that her delicate face changed color, and she was dumbfounded. It's that kid. He's Du Xiaofu. He's preparing to break through. Zhu Ding shouted. He had fought with the young man in front of him before. However, the young man had escaped from his hands. Now that they met again, his eyes were red with jealousy. Is it this kid? I've finally found him. Qin Lang's pupils constricted. His gaze had long since locked onto the purple-robed youth who was wrapped in white light. Ha 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 ha. Bing Qinli laughed out loud, revealing the anger that had accumulated over the past few days. He said, "Attack! Capture this kid. We must skin this little bastard alive later." Attack! Several auras of the Meridian Spirit Realm took the lead. Bing Qinli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, as well as the sword-wielding woman and youth, 5 figures pounced out at the same time. They were afraid that Du Xiaofu would run away again, so they had to capture Du Xiaofu first. "Everyone, you may leave." A crisp voice rang out, and in the blink of an eye, a voluptuous figure appeared in front of the 5 of them, blocking their path. The person who blocked them was the sexy and enchanting woman. A powerful, profound energy fluctuation spread out, directly blocking the 5 of them. Swish! The 5 of them were blocked, and the 5 of them slowly landed on the ground. The 5 of them immediately raised their heads to look at the sexy and enchanting woman. "Senior Xiaoman, what's wrong?" The sword-wielding woman looked at the sexy and enchanting woman and asked. Her eyes were filled with doubt, and the others were also puzzled. On the sexy and enchanting woman's face, there was still some surprise that had not faded. She looked at the sword-wielding woman, Qin Lang, Bing Qinli, and the rest. After taking a deep breath, her red lips opened slightly and said, "He's breaking through. No matter what, it's not appropriate for us to attack now. Let's wait until he breaks through." "Senior Du, are you sure? That kid is extraordinary. Now that he is making a breakthrough, it is our best opportunity. If we wait for him to make a breakthrough, it will be really difficult for us to capture that kid." Zhu Ding said, "Senior Du, we have to attack now. There can't be any more accidents." Bing Qinli said in a deep voice, "No matter what, we have to wait until he breaks through. Otherwise, he will have to defeat me first." The sexy woman looked at the 5 of them with a determined expression. Her tone was cold, and she did not seem to be joking. With a shake of her slender hand, a red sword immediately appeared in her palm. Buzz! As the long sword was held in the woman's slender hand, the sword vibrated and the runes flashed. The surrounding heaven and earth energy started to fluctuate. "Senior Du, are you trying to protect that kid? Could it be that you are his accomplice? No wonder we couldn't find him." Bing Qinli's eyes suddenly darkened. Hearing this, the sword-wielding woman looked at Bing Qinli and said, "Bing Qinli, what do you mean? How could Senior Xiaoman be his accomplice?" "I think that's the truth. Otherwise, why would she stop us from attacking?" Bing Qinli said in a deep voice. "You?" The sword-wielding woman seemed to want to say something, but the sexy woman interrupted her and said, "Xiaolu, this has nothing to do with you. I have to interfere. You can leave now." Hula! Just as the enchanting woman's voice fell, a strange energy fluctuation suddenly rippled behind her. Swoosh, swoosh. Everyone looked over and saw that within the white divine light, a tyrannical aura burst out from the purple-robed youth's body. The aura continued to rise. As the aura continued to rise, the dazzling runes and the pressure became stronger. The white divine light around Du Xiaofu became more intense. It was extremely mystical. That kid has already started to break through. We can't delay any longer. Zhu Ding, Guo Qing, the two of you stop Du Xiaoman. Qin Lang, you and I will deal with that kid. We can't let him escape. As Bing Qianli said that, he had already dashed out. Bing Qianli, Senior Xiaoman is right. Wait for him to break through before attacking. You are too shameless to attack him at the critical moment of his breakthrough. The sword-wielding woman gritted her teeth and her dark chi surged. Her body flashed and the long sword in her hand slashed out. Every sword shadow that slashed out had a terrifying force that instantly enveloped Bing Qianli. Bing Qianli, you deal with that kid first. I will deal with Zhang Lu. Qin Lang's voice was heard. Dark chi surged out from the soles of his feet, and he blocked the sword-wielding woman. Palm prints flew out from his hands and forcefully blocked the sword radiance of the sword-wielding woman. Swoosh! The sexy woman moved and immediately blocked Bing Qianli. The runes on the long sword in her hand were dazzling, and a mighty aura suddenly swept through the valley. Senior Du, sorry for the offense. In the blink of an eye, Zhu Ding and the other youth had already blocked in front of the sexy woman. Rumble. The two of them seemed to be afraid of the sexy woman in front of them. Hence, they attacked with all their might. Palm prints formed and a mighty attack swept out along with the runes and instantly enveloped the sexy woman. Bing Qianli, if you dare to hurt him, don't blame me. I will disregard the friendship between the academy and make you pay back 10 times. At this moment, the sexy woman's aura suddenly became fierce and she shouted loudly. However, she had no choice but to block Zhu Ding and Guo Qing. The red long sword in her hand slashed out a sword radiance. Sword seals formed and rays of sword radiance instantly swept out. Looking from afar, the sword radiance seemed to be moving slowly. However, if one looked closely, they would be able to see that the slow sword radiance was just an illusion. It was an illusion that the sword radiance was moving at an extremely fast speed. Every time the sword radiance slashed out, it would leave a sword-shaped afterimage in the air. In reality, it was as fast as lightning and its aura was strong and fierce. Swoosh! At this moment, Bing Qianli's figure had already formed a series of afterimages. Violent dark chi surged out and his fist was wrapped in a dazzling rune light. He directly punched towards Du Xiaofu, who was wrapped in a white divine radiance. Time to update. Brothers who have not slept yet, go to bed early after watching this. Chapter 233. Crackle Crackle. When such a punch was blasted out, there were continuous crackling sounds in the air. Under such a powerful impact, it was as if space was about to be torn apart. Its speed was as fast as lightning, and in an instant, it was about to reach the edge of the white divine light around Du Xiaofu. Qi. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, the white divine light around Du Xiaofu suddenly vanished like a bolt of lightning. His tightly shut eyes abruptly opened, and bright light flickered within them. Crackle! Before he could stand up from his cross-legged position, Du Xiaofu's arm shook in the face of the incoming fist. Rune energy surged out from his palm and collided with Bing Qianli's incoming fist. Bang! As the energy collided, a shockwave soared into the sky. As the terrifying shockwave spread, Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged, was sent flying from the rock. Thud thud. At the same time his body left the rock, a wave of energy surged out. Then, he staggered and landed on the ground, only stabilizing his body after a few steps. Bing Qianli's body shook, and his movements were graceful and free. He stood on the rock where Du Xiaofu had been sitting. The energy around him fluctuated, and his clothes fluttered. He sneered as he looked at Du Xiaofu, who had been sent flying, and said lightly, "So you're breaking through to the 3-star Nirvana Realm Spirit Symbol Master. Looks like even if you've broken through, you're just so-so." Whoosh whoosh, almost at the same time, Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, and Zhu Ding's law enforcers, which were close to 30 people, flashed. Their profound energy surged, and their weapons were unsheathed. Instantly, they surrounded Du Xiaofu. Rumble. Instantly, dozens of extremely powerful and sharp auras surged, shaking the small valley below the rock wall. The wind and clouds surged, and the energy fluctuated endlessly. The thick clouds above fluctuated, as if forming a huge wave. Huff! At the same time, Du Xiaofu opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. The light in his eyes slowly disappeared as he looked around. However, Du Xiaofu did not look at Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and the others. Instead, his gaze landed on the alluring woman who was being surrounded by two people. His resolute face immediately rippled and a smile appeared in his eyes. "Get out of my way." At the same time, the hot woman shouted coldly. Profound chi surged out from her feet, causing all the men to have a nosebleed to float in the air. Her long hair that was as black as ink fluttered in the wind. She made a sword gesture, and a sky full of materialized sword shadows instantly spun out like a sky full of wind blades. Swish, swish. The sword shadow cut through the space as if it was tearing the space apart. Then, it suddenly spread throughout the entire valley, covering the space within a radius of a few hundred meters. Walala! As the sword gesture was made, sand and stones flew around in the valley. A large area of rocks was directly destroyed by the sword light, turning into rubble. The pressure of the spiritual artifact shrouded the sky, and the sky full of materialized sword shadows connected head to tail. It was like a sword net that enveloped the space, completely enveloping the man called Guoqing and Zhu Ding. The sword net enveloped over, and the violent energy wind that filled the sky cut through the space. Zhu Ding and Guoqing's faces were grave as they attacked with all their might. The sky full of rune energy bloomed, and the powerful energy kept sweeping towards the sword net. Rumble. The energy collided, and the air trembled. The terrifying energy poured down like a mountain torrent, and the rumbling sound was endless. Under the combined efforts of Zhu Ding and Guoqing, they finally managed to resist the sword net. However, the clothes on the two of them were immediately left with sword marks. Mysterious Meridian Spirit Realm Cultivation, high-grade spiritual artifact, your strength is not bad. Not far away, Du Xiaofu looked at the hot woman, and a smile appeared in his eyes as he muttered, "Stop, all of you stop right now." After forcing Zhu Ding and Guoqing back, the hot woman did not attack again. As her lovable shout rang out, her tall and slender figure floated back and landed on the ground. The tip of her foot tapped on the ground, and she took a few steps back, passing Bing Qianli and arriving beside Du Xiaofu. Hearing this, Qin Lang and the sword-wielding woman called Zhang Lu, who were in the midst of fighting, also separated upon contact. The two of them stopped fighting. Everyone's gaze fell on the hot woman. They did not know why she was so protective of the brat called Du Xiaofu. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had also successfully broken through, Bing Qianli's gaze slightly twitched, and he did not continue to attack. Seeing that everyone had temporarily stopped fighting, the hot woman's eyebrows slightly relaxed. Her graceful figure slowly turned around, and her clear and bright eyes tightly stared at Du Xiaofu. Her eyes were filled with sternness, and the surrounding valley immediately quieted down. After a good while, the hot woman's cherry-red lips gently opened, her voice similarly cold. Her bright eyes stared at Du Xiaofu as she said, "You've grown up, haven't you? You didn't come to find me the moment you arrived at the academy, and instead caused such a huge trouble. Let's see how you're going to deal with this." Du Xiaofu looked at the pretty girl in front of him. She looked to be around 22 or 23 years old, and although she was not exceedingly beautiful, she had an extraordinary beauty. Her pitch-black eyes were as clear as a stream, and as beautiful as the clouds reflected on a clear pond. There was an indescribable enchanting charm to her, and also an otherworldly beauty. As he sized up the girl in front of him and listened to her cold tone, Du Xiaofu's eyes still carried a smile. He did not speak, and did not know what to say. Du Xiaofu only smiled. It was also like this when he was young. Every time he was bullied, the girl in front of him would stand up for him. At that time, he did not know what to say, and could only smile like this. However, the smile was somewhat different. Compared to the smile in the past, this smile now had an additional sense of confidence. The only thing that did not change was that the smile in her eyes was still as clear as ever. "What's going on?" Hearing the hot woman's words and looking at the expressions of the two people, Bing Qianli, Zhu Ding, Zhang Lu, and the rest all revealed a puzzled expression. Seeing that Du Xiaofu did not speak, the hot woman's ethereal eyes trembled slightly. Her slender and straight legs took a step forward and landed directly in front of Du Xiaofu. Her body was almost the same height as Du Xiaofu, and the shorts that wrapped around her perky buttocks, coupled with her long and slender legs, revealed a silent, enchanting charm amidst the heat. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, the hot woman seemed to be unable to take it anymore. She lifted her slender hand and directly grabbed Du Xiaofu's left ear, gnashing her teeth. However, it was obvious that she did not use much strength. She shouted, "Stinky brat, you still dare to not speak? Are you not putting me in your eyes now that you've grown up?" "Ah!" Du Xiaofu let out a miserable shriek and said, "Big sister, how am I not putting you in my eyes? I wanted to look for you the moment I entered Tianwu Academy. However, I was bullied by a few seniors when I asked my brother to find out about you. I couldn't hold myself back and took action, but I didn't have the time to find you. It hurts, big sister. Can you let go of me first? I've already grown up. You can't pull my ear like you did when we were young. You'll lose face." Following Du Xiaofu's miserable shriek, the hot woman immediately released her grip on Du Xiaofu's ear. Her gaze immediately turned gentle, and her cold voice suddenly became gentle. Her ethereal eyes were filled with concern. However, she secretly gritted her teeth and chided, "You still dare to talk about face with me? You deserve to die from the pain." After his ear was released, Du Xiaofu chuckled. Who else could the seductive woman in front of him be other than his big sister, Du Xiaoman, the daughter of his big uncle? Lifting his head to look at the woman in front of him, Zhang Xian saw an orange-red loose robe covering her slender neck. Her breasts were as white as jade, and her cleavage was faintly discernible. His eyes immediately lit up and he said, "Big sister, you seem to be getting more and more beautiful. Where are you looking at? Behave yourself. Let's see how you're going to deal with this." Du Xiaoman glared at Du Xiaofu. However, when she saw the resolute and handsome face, she couldn't help but soften her gaze. She lifted her slender hand and lightly brushed off the dust and withered grass on his shoulder. She said softly, "Brat, why did you come to Tianwu Academy? You must have suffered quite a bit along the way, right?" Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. He looked at Du Xiaoman and scratched the back of his head. He seemed to be a little nervous as he replied, "It's all right. I arrived at Tianwu Academy after walking for a while. However, there were a few times where I nearly lost my life. Fortunately, I'm lucky and didn't die." Upon hearing those words, Du Xiaoman's clear eyes trembled slightly. Back then, when she left the academy, the young man before her was still a cripple who couldn't cultivate. He was known throughout Stone City as a foolish young man who was bullied by his peers in the clan and ignored by his elders. However, in just a few short years, the young man before her had grown to the point where he could shake the entire Tianwu Academy. Du Xiaoman wasn't sure what happened to the young man before her, but Du Xiaoman could imagine that it wasn't an easy process. Just the few days of pursuit by the Tianwu Academy's enforcement squad was enough for him to suffer quite a bit. Go back with big sister. No matter what happened in the academy, just explain it to the academy elders. With big sister around, nothing will happen, all right? Du Xiaoman said to Du Xiaofu. She looked at the purple-robed young man's clear eyes and innocent appearance. Even though he had changed a little compared to before, he still had a nervous expression on his face. Was he really the ferocious young man described in the rumors? Upon hearing those words, Du Xiaofu's gaze flickered. After pondering for a moment, he turned to Du Xiaoman and asked, "Big sister, do you know someone called Ouying Shuang? I've met her a few times. She seems to have entered the martial ranking a few months ago. Why?" Du Xiaoman asked doubtfully. "Have you seen her recently?" Du Xiaofu asked. Chapter 234. Du Xiaoman thought back for a moment, her bright eyes moving slightly. She then nodded towards Du Xiaofu and said softly, "I remember now. A few days ago, I went to the Talisman Institute to collect some pills. I think I saw her once. She was in a hurry, her face a little anxious. Why, do you know her too?" Phew. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu instantly breathed a sigh of relief, then continued to ask, "Then did you see a little girl by her side, and a king-scaled tiger monster beast?" Du Xiaoman shook her head and said, "No, I remember clearly. I only saw her alone at the Talisman Institute, but I didn't pay much attention to her. After all, I'm not that familiar with her." Could it be that she went to the Talisman Institute to send Dai Xingyu there? If that tomboy is fine, then Xingyu and the little tiger should also be fine, right? Du Xiaofu mumbled softly. "Stinking brat, what are you mumbling about?" Du Xiaoman saw Du Xiaofu mumbling to himself in a daze and asked instantly, "Nothing, as long as she's fine." Du Xiaofu came back to his senses and said with a smile, Ouyang Shuang was fine and had even arrived at the academy. This allowed Du Xiaofu to put down the matter he had been worried about all this time. "Senior Du, this brat is your younger brother?" Hearing this, the surrounding crowd finally understood. No wonder Du Xiaoman wanted to protect that brat. So that brat called Du Xiaofu was actually Du Xiaoman's younger brother. That's right. Everyone, let's end this matter here. I've also just confirmed that this stinking brat is my younger brother. I'll bring him back and explain things to the elders, Du Xiaoman said to Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and the others. Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and the others looked at each other, momentarily at a loss for what to do. Right at this moment, Du Xiaofu looked at Du Xiaoman and said softly, "Big sis, I'm sorry, but I won't return to the academy with you." Hearing Zhang Xin's words, Du Xiaoman's eyes flickered. "Brat, what else do you want? Do you really think that you can escape from Tianwu Academy's pursuit? Do you know that you're already on the Academy's bounty board, and you're ranked 86th? I'm on the bounty list?" Hearing those words, Du Xiaofu was stunned. His mouth was wide open, as though he had just discovered something shocking. A moment later, a smile appeared on his face as he looked at Du Xiaoman and said, "Not bad. However, isn't it a little too easy to get on Tianwu Academy's bounty board?" "Too easy?" Du Xiaoman rolled her eyes at Du Xiaofu. This seemingly harmless brat before her was the first write-in student in the academy to kill another student, resulting in 2 deaths and 3 cripples. He also stole the Chinkuan bag of an enforcer, severely injuring the enforcer and arresting the enforcer. This was the reason why he was on the bounty list. She didn't expect this brat to say that it was too easy. "Senior Du, you heard it. Do you intend to do it yourself, or do you want us to do it?" Bing Qianli immediately said when the surrounding crowd heard this. He had been suppressing quite a lot of anger. He did not want to let off this brat, who had toyed with him several times and caused the law enforcement team's reputation to be completely destroyed. Hearing Bing Qianli's words, Du Xiaoman looked at Du Xiaofu. A slight breeze blew over, causing her fine black hair to flutter. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her eyes were clear. Her seductive figure exuded a hint of arrogance. Du Xiaofu remained silent as he secretly assessed his elder sister. Suddenly, he felt that his elder sister had changed quite a bit over the years. She exuded a hint of arrogance, and behind her seductive aura, she seemed unapproachable. For a lady who came from a small city like Stone City to reach her current level in Tianwu Academy, where geniuses gathered, his elder sister must have suffered a lot over the years. Du Xiaofu thought to himself. Seeing that he had disobeyed her orders and even got himself into trouble, his elder sister must still be worried about him. "Brat, you heard it. Do you want them to do it, or do you want me to do it? Or do you want to follow me back?" After a moment of silence, Du Xiaoman lowered her head and looked at Du Xiaofu. Her clear eyes met his, and her dimples showed no signs of anger. Instead, a faint smile appeared on her face. Du Xiaofu's eyes were still filled with smiles. Looking at Du Xiaoman, he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Elder sister, why don't you let me try it out with them first? However, I won't follow you back. If you have the ability, then capture me first." "All right, I also want to know how much of my third uncle's skills you have learned." Du Xiaoman's clear eyes looked at the purple-robed young man in front of her. For some reason, an unfathomable fluctuation appeared in her eyes before it faded away. Turning around to look at Bing Qianli and the rest, she said, "All right, you guys can do it." As her words fell, Du Xiaoman's graceful figure moved to the side with light steps. The light in Zhang Lu's eyes flickered. Then, She withdrew without leaving a trace and stood beside Du Xiaoman. Du Xiaoman's red lips curled into a bitter smile. She did not say anything, and only looked at Zhang Lu with a bitter smile. Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding and Guo Qing looked at each other. Then, the four of them stood together, their gazes fixed on Du Xiaofu. Brat, you can't escape. I said before, I will definitely capture you. Bing Qianli stared at Du Xiaofu, his eyes brimming with rage. If it weren't for Du Xiaoman's presence, he wouldn't have been so courteous. Du Xiaofu did not respond to Bing Qianli's words. Instead, he glanced at Bing Qianli and the rest and said, "You guys can search for caves and chase rabbits, but it's not enough to capture me. Come at me together. Otherwise, you won't be able to defeat me alone." A young man did not put the experts on the martial ranking and the captain of the enforcement team in his eyes. He even said that he wouldn't be able to defeat them alone. His words instantly caused everyone's expressions to change. That brat's words were clearly mocking the law enforcement team. A few days ago, they had been toyed with by him alone. Putting aside Bing Qianli, Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and the rest, even the rest of them were elites among the younger generation. When they heard Du Xiaofu's words, the members of the enforcement team could not tolerate his arrogant tone, and their profound chi fluctuated. Brat, you are indeed arrogant. I know that you are capable, but don't overestimate yourself in Tianwu Academy. Bing Qianli bellowed furiously. He was about to attack as he had already exchanged blows with this brat. A talisman master at the 3-star Permitha realm was only SOSO. He really did not know how Xiang Tianin's team suffered such a loss. You alone are not enough. Come at me together. Du Xiaofu glanced at Bing Qianli and did not put him to heart. Senior Xiaoman, your brother is really arrogant. Zhang Lu looked at Du Xiaofu, who was blocked by Bing Qianli and the rest, and said to Du Xiaoman. Du Xiaoman smiled bitterly and said, he wasn't like this in the past. Perhaps time will make a person change a lot. Du Xiaoman paused for a moment before she straightened her long and slender legs slightly. Her perky buttocks were perfectly round, and her waist seemed to be boneless. Moreover, her eyes were suffused with a slight glow as she said, however, I like his current appearance even more. At the very least, this is how he should be. All of you, hold the fort for me. I'm going to skin this brat alive today. Bing Qianli bellowed furiously. After he finished speaking to Qin Lang and the rest, he could no longer hold it in and charged towards Du Xiaofu with his profound qi surging out. Although Bing Qianli was furious, he did not lose his rationality. As an expert on the martial ranking, he was not someone who would be easily affected by others. However, the purple-robed youth before him had truly infuriated Bing Qianli. Amidst his fury, Bing Qianli maintained his rationality. He knew that although the purple-robed youth was arrogant, he was able to make Xiang Tianin suffer. This was enough to prove his ability. Therefore, although Bing Qianli was furious, he did not dare to be careless. He never thought that he was stronger than Xiang Tianin, but he did not believe that this immature young man was as terrifying as the rumors made him out to be. Berserk heaven-shattering fist. The fist print was formed. Bing Qianli used his full strength from the get-go. Runes covered the entire valley, and the energy was monstrous. It was definitely a spiritual-grade martial skill, and a strong pressure spread out. Rumble. With this punch, the space in front of the fist formed a rune vortex. Dazzling light swept out like a flash flood, and a rumbling sound could be heard. It was as if the space was shattered. Large pieces of rocks in the valley cracked under the violent force and turned into broken rocks. This is the famous martial skill of the captain. That brat is done for. Some of the surrounding enforcers were discussing, and some were laughing. When Bing Qianli used this move, it was enough to show that he was extraordinary. He was indeed an expert on the martial ranking. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the purple-robed youth, Du Xiaofu, did not retreat at all. Du Xiaofu moved. Within his eyes, a faint golden light surged. A faint golden light enveloped his entire body. Raising his arms, he didn't dodge or evade. Instead, he punched out. On his fist, there were golden talismans and mysterious runes. A domineering and fierce aura erupted from Du Xiaofu's body at this moment. The originally harmless temperament on his body was instantly submerged. At this moment, his entire person was like a human-shaped demonic beast king. Boom! As he punched out, the domineering faint golden talisman runes destroyed the golden vortex in front of Bing Qianli's fist. Then, the punch landed on Bing Qianli's fist. Walala! Monstrous golden runes covered Bing Qianli's fist, and a domineering aura swept across the sky. At that moment, for some reason, the hearts of the surrounding people could not help but tremble. Chapter 235. Bang bang. Low and deep sounds were like rolling thunder. Runes shattered and shot out, dazzling like fireworks. However, it contained an extremely terrifying energy. At the same time, Bing Qianli's miserable shriek came from the center of the berserk energy. Then, Bing Qianli's body was sent flying. His entire fist was badly mangled and dripping with blood. White bones could faintly be seen. The white bones even had cracks on them. His right arm was so soft that he could no longer raise it. Bang! Bing Qianli's body fell beside Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and Guo Qing. However, before he landed, he was caught by Qin Lang, who had quick reflexes. Ding ding! However, Qin Lang was also forced to stagger back. He took 4 steps back, and every step he took, the rocks beneath his feet turned into dust. Poochie! Bing Qianli was caught by Qin Lang and did not heavily fall to the ground. However, on his pale face, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Du Xiaofu's body only slightly shook. When he fought with Bing Qianli earlier, he had just made a breakthrough in the Spirit Symbol Master realm and used the power of a Spirit Symbol Master. Therefore, he was still in an absolute disadvantage. If it wasn't for his strong body, he would have been heavily injured. However, Du Xiaofu used the power of a martial cultivator. Although their cultivation levels were the same, the strength that he used to forcefully resist was on a completely different level. Heavens, such powerful strength. It's truly abnormal. Zhang Lu was moved. Her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. Bing Qianli's strength was above her by quite a bit. However, in one exchange, he was heavily injured by Du Xiaofu. How tyrannical and valiant was his strength. What has third brother experienced all these years? Du Xiaoman's ethereal eyes were also filled with ripples. Although she had heard of the rumors, the shock of seeing it with her own eyes was the most shocking. Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, Guo Qing, and the rest of the law enforcers were also shocked. No one would have thought that Bing Qianli would be heavily injured by a photo. That brat's arrogance was because he had sufficient strength, and not because he spoke without thinking. That brat was simply too powerful. Bing Qianli's mouth was dripping with blood. He did not expect the purple-robed youth in front of him to be on a completely different level from the previous move. He suddenly became so terrifying. Bastard, I won't let you off. After a moment of shock, Bing Qianli shouted. At the same time, he rushed out again and connected with his martial vein. Dazzling runes spread out from his body and formed a huge demonic wolf shadow behind him. Boom! Following the appearance of this demon wolf, the entire valley trembled. This demon wolf phantom was different from the others. It was extremely ferocious and astonishing. It was over 6 meters long, and its body was robust like a male lion. Its entire body was covered in thick scales, and its mouth was filled with sharp fangs. It was incomparably ferocious. The runes on the demon wolf's body revolved around it, and it emitted a terrifying fluctuation. It was extremely powerful. Mad Demon Skywolf, the top king of the demon beasts of the Wolf Clan. It is said that it can even command the Wolf Clan. It is too strong. Looking at the martial vein spirit that Bing Qianli had activated, everyone's eyes trembled. Bing Qianli's demonic vein was famous throughout the entire Tianwu Academy. Brat, you are only in the pulsation realm. There is an insurmountable gap between you and me. Let's see how you are going to resist the suppression of my martial vein spirit. Bing Qianli shouted. He realized that Du Xiaofu was only in the pulsation realm. In terms of martial vein spirit, it was impossible for him to contend against someone in the pulsation realm. That was an insurmountable gap. Thus, he activated his martial vein spirit and staked it all on this one attack. Roar! The mad demon Skywolf howled. The runes on its body flickered, and it immediately charged towards Du Xiaofu. Rumble. In an instant, the demon sky wolf activated its martial vein spirit. A terrifying aura swept out, and the valley trembled. Sand and stones were sent flying as it howled. The terrifying aura violently suppressed Du Xiaofu, as though it wanted to tear Du Xiaofu apart. Evil creature! Du Xiaofu softly shouted. Instead of retreating, he advanced. The profound aura under his feet surged. With a stomp, he shattered rocks and cracked the ground. Instantly, he charged towards the mad demon skywolf. Sky-shaking wings. At the same time, Du Xiaofu waved his hand. Layer upon layer of faint golden symbols spread out from his hand and rapidly gathered around him. Suddenly, a domineering aura soared into the sky. With a wave of his hand, it was like a great rock flapping its wings. In the end, it ruthlessly slammed onto the mad demon sky wolf's body. Heavens, is this brat crazy? He's actually using his physical body to fight against the martial vein spirit. Although the surrounding crowd knew that Du Xiaofu was extraordinary, when they saw that Du Xiaofu was actually using his physical body to fight against Bing Qian Li's violent mad demon sky wolf's martial vein spirit, their gazes trembled and they did not dare to look straight at him. Boom! In a short instant, Du Xiaofu's physical body had already collided with the astonishingly violent mad demon sky wolf's martial vein spirit. How can this be? However, the result caused everyone to gasp. In the blink of an eye, Bing Qian Li's violent mad demon sky wolf's martial vein spirit was easily destroyed by Du Xiaofu. It was like a hot knife through butter as the martial vein spirit's martial vein spirit was directly turned into rune fragments. With his martial vein spirit destroyed, Bing Qian Li opened his mouth and spat out blood. I already said that you are no match for me. Why don't you believe me? The purple-robed youth's figure was like a ghost. He floated like a deity and gracefully appeared in front of Bing Qian Li in an instant. Du Xiaofu's palm pressed down. His ghostly strength was at its peak as he destroyed Bing Qian Li's final defense and landed on Bing Qian Li's shoulder like a bolt of lightning. Walala! Under the fearful gazes of the crowd, Bing Qian Li's body was directly lifted up by Du Xiaofu. Then, like a rock, Bing Qian Li was ruthlessly thrown out. He drew a curved arc in the air before heavily smashing into the rock wall. Crack, crack, crack. The rock wall trembled as large chunks of rocks fell into the valley. Bing Qian Li's body fell from the rock wall along with the rocks. The sound of his bones breaking could be heard as he spat out blood. Finally, he landed heavily in the valley. Bing Qian Li's body struggled a few times, but he could no longer get up. Huff, huff. The entire valley sucked in a breath of cold air. Everyone was flabbergasted. Such terrifying strength was simply terrifying. How can he be so much stronger? He was clearly not so strong back then. Zhu Ding's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with shock and stupefaction. He had fought with Du Xiaofu that night, and the youth was clearly not as strong as he was now. In just a short span of 2 to 3 days, Du Xiaofu's strength had increased to such a terrifying level. Zhu Ding naturally did not know that the night he fought with Du Xiaofu was the critical moment of Du Xiaofu's breakthrough in martial arts. This greatly affected Du Xiaofu's strength and caused him to lose his will to fight. Otherwise, he would not be a match for Du Xiaofu that night. At this moment, Du Xiaofu had already broken through to the Pulse Realm Nirvana Realm. Compared to before, his strength had improved tremendously and could not be compared. Join hands and capture this kid. We cannot let him escape. Qin Lang, Guo Qing, and Zhu Ding looked at each other with a solemn expression. Then, the three of them attacked at the same time, and 3 figures flew into the air. Swoosh, swoosh. The 3 of them surrounded Du Xiaofu in a triangular formation. 3 powerful auras exploded and connected to the martial veins. Dazzling runes appeared in the sky. In a short span of time, the sky was filled with pressure and rune-light energy. 3 pulse-soul demonic beast phantoms appeared in the air. Roar, roar, roar. A giant golden-eyed leopard roared, and its eyes seemed to shoot out golden light beams. Its aura was shocking. A giant demonic bear with yellow armor roared and beat its chest. Its aura was earth-shattering. A ferocious demonic eagle with a wingspan of a few feet screeched. Runes spread all over its body. Its sharp claws had flames jumping and seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. Rumble. The three pulse-soul demonic beast phantoms with dazzling runes and terrifying aura crushed the space. At the same time, they swooped down to crush Du Xiaofu. The three pulse-soul demonic beast phantoms wanted to destroy the space and crush Du Xiaofu into pieces. Letting the three terrifying pulse-soul demonic beast phantoms pounce on him, Du Xiaofu seemed to ignore them. The mysterious runes of the talismans surged. In a short span of time, a domineering and terrifying aura burst out like a flash flood. In an instant, the golden light around Du Xiaofu soared into the sky like a rising sun. It was as if a golden-winged rock was about to fly out. Rock descends to the ninth heaven. Du Xiaofu shouted lightly as the hand seals on his hands changed. Talisman scripts flowed, and multicolored light flickered. Amidst the dazzling light that was like the rising sun, golden multicolored light flickered, and a pair of talisman markings that glittered with golden light instantly stretched out. Buzz. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's body soared into the sky and instantly broke away from the siege of the three pulse-soul demonic beasts. Boom. The domineering and fierce aura suddenly swept out from Du Xiaofu's body. The wings flapped and the flowing light overflowed. The magnificent light filled the sky. The golden light bloomed in the sky. The airflow whistled in the sky. The momentum was terrifying, like a rock flapping its wings, soaring in the nine heavens. At this moment, the three pulse-soul demonic beast phantoms that swooped down seemed to have felt the aura of fear. They hissed and roared with fear in their eyes. Suppress, destroy. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings. At this moment, he activated the rock descends to the nine heavens. It was as if a real golden-winged rock had descended. It carried the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan. It flapped its wings and swept across the sky. The domineering and terrifying aura was monstrous. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings. Every move he made was domineering and fierce. Walala. In an instant, with the momentum of suppressing all things, he forcefully destroyed the three pulse-soul demonic beasts and scattered the runes in the sky. Rumble. At this moment, the purple-robed young man in the sky above the valley was bathed in golden light. He was the only one in the world. He easily suppressed everything, causing the valley to rumble and the space to tremble. The pulse souls of Qin Lang, Zhu Ding, and Guo Qing were destroyed. The three of them spat out dark red blood. Do you think you are the only ones who can fly? Look at how proud you are. Du Xiaofu's figure quickly appeared in the middle of the three of them. He looked at the three figures floating in the sky and then fiercely attacked. Boom, boom, boom. Of course, Xiaoyu will decide to explode again tomorrow. Chapter 236. Boom, boom, boom. Du Xiaofu was like a demonic beast in human form. Every move he made was filled with a terrifying aura, shattering the space around him and destroying the pitiful defense of the trio. Pong, pong, pong. Qin Lang was smashed into the ground with a single punch, creating a deep crater and cracking rocks. Zhu Ding was sent flying by a wing, crashing heavily into the wall. His body smashed into the ground like a bird with broken wings. Du Xiaofu threw Guo Qing and Luan Fei at him. Guo Qing also fell to the ground in the distance, shattering the rocks around him. Three captains of the enforcement squad, 3 initial Meridian Spirit Realm cultivators, and 3 powerful figures on Tianwu Academy's martial ranking. However, at this moment, they were all defeated by that young man as easily as breaking dry weeds. It was a crushing defeat. Around the valley, all the enforcement team members were shocked. How powerful was that purple-robed youth? Those were 3 experts on the martial role. Including Bing Qianli, there were 4 experts on the martial role of Tianwu Academy. Yet, they were all defeated by that purple-robed youth in just a few moves. So powerful. Is he still a normal person? He's too ferocious. Is he really just a Pulse Realm cultivator? Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. They swallowed their saliva and felt a chill down their spines. That purple-robed youth was like the most terrifying demonic beast's cub, hard to defeat. Sister Xiaoman, your younger brother is too strong. How old is he? Does he have a crush on a girl? Zhang Lu looked at the ferocious purple-robed youth in the air. Her beautiful eyes were filled with astonishment. He should be 16. Why? Are you interested in my third brother? Du Xiaoman smiled faintly. However, the shock in her beautiful eyes was even more shocking than everyone else present. She couldn't imagine what he had gone through in the past few years. From the foolish youth back then, he had transformed into the youth who had shocked the entire Tianwu Academy and suppressed many experts on the martial role. This was something that the Du clan of Stone City wouldn't have dared to imagine. I'm a little over 19. That's just nice. As the saying goes, a woman 3 years older than her husband holds a golden brick. Zhang Lu smiled. Little girl, you're thinking of love. If you like him, you can tell him yourself. I can't help you, Du Xiaoman said with a smile. There were no ripples in her eyes, but there was a hint of graveness that couldn't be removed. Du Xiaofu's golden symbol wings flapped as he circled in the air. At this moment, he did not pay any attention to the 4 people lying on the ground. Instead, he suddenly looked towards the misty sky above the valley and said, Since you have come out. You have to come out eventually. After watching for so long, you should have seen enough, right? That's right, I've seen enough. The law enforcement team seems to be getting more and more useless. So many of them can't even take you down. Let me do it myself. Just as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out in the air. The voice was very calm and unperturbed. Immediately after, the misty clouds in the sky began to churn violently at the same time as the voice sounded, accompanied by a blazing aura that immediately shrouded the entire valley. The clouds fluctuated, and the blazing aura shrouded the sky. In an instant, the misty clouds seemed to have turned into clouds of fire. Whoosh! Blazing rune light immediately gushed out, and the wind and clouds surged. A void palm print wrapped in blazing rune light, as if it was a flame that had materialized. In an instant, it broke through the air, and directly enveloped and crushed the space where Du Xiaofu was. Boom! When this flaming palm print appeared, the energy of heaven and earth in the entire valley began to fluctuate violently. The blazing aura was like a heavenly fire descending from the sky, capable of incinerating all living things. It's him. Heavenly flaming hand Panyu. It's him. Oh my god. Why is that terrifying guy here? Why would he appear here to deal with Du Xiaofu? Gazing at the flaming palm print that seemed to have descended from the sky and pierced through the thick clouds, the gazes of everyone in the valley trembled violently, and all of them revealed a look of fear. Even Du Xiaoman was no exception, and her beautiful face immediately turned grave. Sneaking around. It seems like you're not a good person either. Looking at the flaming palm print that broke through the air and instantly suppressed him, Du Xiaofu shouted loudly, flapped his wings and moved. With a wave of his right hand, he immediately slapped towards the flaming palm print. Chi La, wherever his hand passed, layers of mysterious symbols condensed, and a tyrannical and fierce aura swept out like a giant rock spreading its wings. Dazzling golden light was dazzling, and heavily collided with the flaming palm print. Rumble. Such an energy collision caused the symbols in the air to scatter like brilliant little suns, and the vast and violent energy to sweep out like a hurricane. Whoosh! The flames scattered, and the golden symbols wildly whistled, as if the space was about to explode. A large amount of energy swept across the valley, and rocks poured down like rain from the rock walls on both sides of the valley, causing everyone below to flee in panic. Chilala. As the hurricane energy spread out, Du Xiaofu's figure directly retreated in a straight line. He flapped his wings and only stabilized his body after dozens of meters away. His eyes revealed a look of astonishment as he looked at the depths of the clouds and muttered, "Peak of the pulsation stage, right? Very strong." Chi. As Du Xiaofu's voice faded, a figure stealthily appeared in the scattered clouds and stood there quietly. That figure was faintly discernible within the lingering clouds. He had a face that seemed to have been carefully carved, and his temperament was gentle and composed. With a slender and elegant figure and a dark red robe that fluttered in the wind, he was definitely a handsome man that could topple a large number of girls. It's Panyu. He really came. Within the valley, numerous gazes were tightly fixed on the man in the sky, and all of them had fearful gazes. However, this fear was more of a yearning and reverence. Pan Yu was definitely an influential figure in Tianwu Academy, and there weren't many in Tianwu Academy who didn't know of him. Even within the empire, Pan Yu's name was well known. He was ranked 31st on Tianwu Academy's martial ranking and possessed extraordinary talent. It was only a matter of time before he broke through to Martial Lord realm. Given his talent, there was a 99% chance that he would become a martial king in the future. As long as there were no accidents, he could even be said to be a martial king in the future. How could such a young figure not be famous? The young man floated in midair and stood there quietly. He didn't even glance at the people in the valley below. His sleeves fluttered slightly, revealing his slender fingers. He stood with his hands behind his back. Everything was quiet. This young man didn't stand out, but there was an innate extraordinary aura around him. I know you. You're Du Xiaofu, a right-in student of this batch. You're talented and powerful. The young man in the dark red robe looked at Du Xiaofu. The curve of his lips was rather perfect, as if he was smiling at all times. His voice was very calm as he said, "Let me introduce myself as well. I'm Pan Yu, a senior from the previous batch. I'm currently ranked 31 on the martial ranking. You seem to be a difficult person to deal with. Pan Yu, I seem to have seen you on the martial ranking before." Du Xiaofu stared at the young man before him. Suddenly, he felt that the young man before him had an extremely difficult aura to deal with. He asked, "You aren't from the enforcement team, right?" Pan Yu shook his head and continued speaking to Du Xiaofu. "It seems like you're unfamiliar with me. In order to deepen your impression of me, I'll put it this way. A few days ago, you crippled a senior by the name of Zhu Qing. He wasn't strong enough and couldn't even defeat a right-in student. Originally, he deserved to be crippled. Unfortunately, he's my cousin, so I had no choice but to come find you. If I didn't cripple you, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to answer to his parents." "Is that so?" Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at the young man called Pan Yu. He shook his head and said apologetically, "I'm really sorry. I don't even know the names of the 3 people I crippled. I only know that they owed me justice, so I crippled them." Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked at Pan Yu. He shrugged his shoulders and said, "However, if I knew one of them was your cousin, ranked 31 on the martial ranking, I definitely would have crippled him as well. Don't be polite with me. I helped you teach him. I only did what I should." Hearing this, Pan Yu's gaze froze for a moment, and his chiseled, handsome face immediately froze. He's really arrogant. He doesn't even put the heavenly flame hand Pan Yu in his eyes. In the valley, many people looked up. Because of what Du Xiaofu said to Pan Yu, they also sucked in a breath of cold air for Du Xiaofu. This is going to be troublesome. Only Du Xiaoman's delicate face changed at this moment. It was full of seriousness. Haha, Pan Yu's frozen expression only paused for a moment. Then, a smile appeared on his handsome face again. He looked at Du Xiaofu and laughed. However, there was a flash of red light in Pan Yu's eyes that made people feel that it was sharp. There was also a sharp edge in his smile. After his laughter stopped, he said, "If he's crippled, then so be it. In any case, it has nothing to do with me." He didn't know how to improve himself and was obsessed with women. He deserved to end up like this. However, he's my cousin after all. Therefore, if I don't cripple you, it won't be justifiable if word gets out. Pan Yu, you're ranked 31 on the martial ranking. It's not good for you to attack a new student. Du Xiaoman's beautiful figure was graceful. Her figure was like a willow. Profound energy surged, and she suddenly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. However, she didn't look at Du Xiaofu. Instead, her ethereal eyes were tightly fixed on Pan Yu with a serious expression. "Senior Du, your identity is a little special in the academy. However, you should understand that your special identity is completely useless to me. With your strength, you're not my opponent." Chapter 237. Facing Du Xiaoman, Pan Yu did not seem to mind at all. His calm tone was filled with absolute arrogance. Even in front of a fiery and seductive girl like Du Xiaoman, he was still as arrogant. "You." Hearing this, Du Xiaoman's expression immediately changed. but her expression turned even more serious. Du Xiaoman was well aware of Pan Yu's strength. Even though she had been in Tianwu Academy for 3 more years than Pan Yu, the other party's absolute talent and comprehension had allowed him to surpass her in terms of cultivation and strength. Pan Yu's gaze shifted away from Du Xiaoman's body. Women were not that tempting to him. He continued to stare at Du Xiaofu and said, "Brat, I know you're also a talisman master. To me, the talisman formation you set up cannot trap me, nor can it kill me. However, it might be able to delay me and delay me." After pausing for a year, Pan Yu continued solemnly, "However, I have to warn you. If you dare to escape, I will have no choice but to make a move on your sister. Senior Du is your sister, right? You crippled my cousin. So if you don't give me a chance to cripple you, then I will do something to your sister to collect some interest. I believe you will understand me. Pan Yu, do you really think you can cover the sky in the academy?" Hearing this, Du Xiaoman's expression darkened, and for the first time, her expression turned serious. "Big sis, step back a little. Let me do it." Du Xiaofu leaped forward, spreading his wings to stand in front of Du Xiaoman. He waved his hand, indicating for Du Xiaoman to step back. At this moment, the indifferent expression on his face was no longer indifferent. At this moment, a hint of coldness and sharpness appeared in his calm expression, and his eyes were intimidating. Du Xiaoman still wanted to say something, but she felt the sudden change in aura from Du Xiaofu's body. That intimidating gaze and cold and sharp aura caused her heart to turn cold for no reason. Unknowingly, she felt her hair stand on end. "Brat, be careful. Don't be careless and don't be threatened by him. Your sister is not someone he can deal with just because he wants to." This was exactly the result he wanted. "You've angered me. The consequences should be severe," Du Xiaofu said. As the sound of his voice faded, the golden runic wings flapped as a tyrannical and sharp aura erupted forth. The golden runic inscriptions on its body instantly fluctuated, akin to a great rock flapping its wings, suppressing everything as it lunged towards Pan Yu. To have such talent at such a young age, I'm really envious. It's just that his level is still not high enough. Sensing Du Xiaofu's astonishing aura sweeping over, Pan Yu couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Boom! Just as the tyrannical and sharp aura was about to erupt, Pan Yu suddenly made his move. He threw out a punch that was wrapped in crimson runes like flames, releasing a scorching aura abruptly. Boom! Du Xiaofu retaliated by flapping his wings like a great rock flapping its wings and colliding with Pan Yu. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the golden runic storm in the sky above the valley roared. The blazing flame runes swept across, and the mighty energy rippled around the valley, rumbling as if it was going to destroy the towering cliffs on both sides of the valley. The two separated as soon as they made contact, as if there was not much difference between them. So powerful. However, at the same time, Du Xiaofu's sharp and intimidating eyes were filled with shock. Although he had only reached the Nirvana realm not long ago, Du Xiaofu knew very well how powerful his attacking strength was with his physical body and the cultivation method of the Golden Winged Rock Clan. However, Pan Yu was able to withstand his attack head-on. This was enough to show how powerful the other party was. Although they were all on the martial ranking, Pan Yu wasn't someone Bing Qianli, Qinlang, Zhu Ding, and the others could compare to. The higher one's ranking was on the martial ranking, the more valuable it would be. You're indeed powerful. Zhu Qing wasn't wronged for being crippled by you. Pan Yu's body retreated, and the expression in his eyes fluctuated slightly. He knew best how strong his attack power was. He didn't expect that ferocious young man to be able to withstand his attack forcefully. This was enough to show how terrifying he was. It was no wonder that the enforcement team couldn't do anything about him, and the entire Tianwu Academy was about to be turned upside down. Now, it's your turn. As his voice faded, it was still calm. However, the sharpness contained within this calmness became even denser. As his voice rang out, Pan Yu made his move. He soared through the air and pounced towards Du Xiaofu. A rune light pillar flashed in his hand, transforming into a blazing rune energy that instantly enveloped Du Xiaofu. Raging Flames Cage. The scorching runic energy covered the sky as a scorching aura enveloped Du Xiaofu, as though it wanted to forcefully suppress Du Xiaofu. The terrifying aura was even more terrifying. It could affect one's mind and soul, causing one's heart to palpitate. Too powerful. In the valley below, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. The strength in the sky wasn't something that they could come in contact with. Is this the cultivation of a pulse spirit realm nirvana realm pinnacle? He's really powerful. Du Xiaofu's expression changed as he was inwardly shocked. Back then in the dark forest, he had already exchanged blows with a pulse spirit realm nirvana realm cultivator from the Black Fiend sect. At the same cultivation level, those elders from the Black Fiend sect couldn't be compared to Pan Yu at all. Sky-shaking wings. Du Xiaofu hurriedly made his move to block Pan Yu. The sky-shaking wings flapped as a tyrannical aura swept out. Du Xiaofu was attacking with all his might. The vast and mighty energy seemed to form layers of light screens around his body. At this moment, facing the terrifying scorching runic energy, Du Xiaofu was said to be resisting, but it was more like he was involuntarily suppressed to defend himself. A strong physical body, an extraordinary cultivation method of the golden-winged great rocks, and Pan Yu's blazing cage attack was extraordinary, but it was blocked by Du Xiaofu. For someone like Du Xiaofu, who could be said to be somewhat perverted, it was extremely difficult to truly suppress him. Rumble. The energy in the sky surged. Although Du Xiaofu resisted the terrifying attack, his body was constantly pushed back. Sky burning. At the same time, just as Du Xiaofu's figure was pushed back, Pan Yu's roar suddenly sounded again. The mysterious qi under his feet surged, and a strange handprint condensed in his hands. Then, the scarlet runes that had materialized all over the sky surged, and in an instant, they swept out like flames that filled the sky. Walala! Suddenly, it was as if a sea of fire had appeared in the sky, causing the space to tremble. Boom! The originally misty clouds in the sky above the valley were suddenly dyed red, and a terrifying scorching aura suddenly spread in the sky above the valley, enveloping the space around Du Xiaofu. Huff huff! The scorching runic energy spread like a sea of fire that enveloped the space, completely enveloping Du Xiaofu. The scorching runic energy that filled the sky made even Du Xiaofu's tough body feel the scorching pain caused by the scorching aura. This terrifying attack was absolutely terrifying, as if it could incinerate and destroy everything. Pan Yu is so powerful. 3 months ago, in the dark forest, it was said that he relied on this sky-burning move to kill 2 perfect meridian spirit stage cultivators. This sky-burning is too terrifying. It is said that when cultivated to the extreme, it is enough to incinerate a cultivator of the same level into ashes. What's even more terrifying is that it can destroy opponents of a higher level. The gazes of the people in the valley below trembled violently, and they began to secretly break out in cold sweat for Du Xiaofu, even though they were still trying to capture Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaoman's expression grew increasingly solemn as her ethereal eyes stared intently at the sky above. At this moment, for Du Xiaofu, who was wrapped in the scorching runic energy, everything happened in a flash. The scorching runic energy that enveloped the sky caused his body to feel uncomfortable and even caused him to feel a scorching pain. This kind of scorching heat was definitely not ordinary and was not something that could be compared to an ordinary scorching aura. However, this scorching sensation only lasted for an instant within Du Xiaofu's body. In just a short period of time, under the scorching runic energy, Du Xiaofu, who had just felt the scorching pain in his body, instantly felt it disappear. It was as if there was a mysterious force within his body that could resist the terrifying heat. It could even be said that the mysterious force was not resisting the scorching energy, but devouring it. Why is it like this? There's a strange feeling. Du Xiaofu was astonished. The mysterious feeling within his body was subtle, and he could tell that it did not originate from the cultivation method of the golden-winged Great Peng. The blazing rune energy continued to flow into his body. Du Xiaofu felt that, strictly speaking, it was as if his body was automatically absorbing and swallowing the rune energy. At this time, his body was not afraid of such heat at all. Whoosh! The scorching runic energy that covered the sky above the valley suddenly fluctuated violently before disappearing in large waves. Chapter 238. Du Xiaofu's figure flapped his wings and soared out of the blazing rune energy. The surrounding blazing rune energy shattered one after another, and was finally all drawn into his body, an extremely mysterious sight to behold. Pan Yu's eyes revealed a look of surprise, and the expression on his handsome face changed. He floated in the air, and a huge amount of blazing energy surged in from all directions, exuding a violent force like that of a volcano. His hand seals formed, and the blazing energy instantly converged like that of a volcano. In that instant, the aura and power on Pan Yu's body seemed to skyrocket once again, and a ball of blazing rune energy soared into the sky. Waves of energy rippled out, and strange rune afterimages condensed like lotuses, finally spiraling in the air. A terrifying blazing aura was released, and the runes were dazzling, like the sun in the sky. At that moment, when that blazing aura was released, anyone could feel the terrifying energy behind that blazing fire lotus. It could be said to be destructive. Is he using his full strength? Feeling the mighty and blazing energy crushing down, Du Xiaofu's eyes also surged with a dignified look. His eyes suddenly flashed with a lightning-like light, and his purple robe fluttered for no reason. Fire Lotus Kill. Pan Yu attacked once again. His hand seals changed, and the fiery lotus that resembled the sun was activated. Like a meteor, it instantly enveloped Du Xiaofu. Roar! With Du Xiaofu as the center, the space beneath his feet constantly fluctuated violently, and a loud shout came from his mouth, like a dragon's roar to the 9 heavens, like the cry of a divine elephant. At that moment, the entire valley rumbled, and the aura was incomparably domineering, looking down on all living things. Boom! Amidst the overbearing surging aura, the mysterious runes on Du Xiaofu's body released ripples. Accompanied by the sound of wind and thunder, it was as if the sound of wind and thunder was emitted from within. His hands transformed into countless palm imprints at lightning speed. Finally, like a collision between meteorites, they violently collided against the terrifying fire lotus symbol light cluster. The palm seals were monstrous and had an imperceptible trajectory and rune undulations. The fiery lotus spun, releasing blazing rune energy that filled the sky. In an instant, such a collision caused the space to distort under the pressure. A huge explosion resounded through the space like a sudden clap of thunder. Rumble. Turbulent energy ripples spread out, causing the surrounding space to tremble rapidly. Large areas of cliffs and precipices cracked. Rocks were the first to fall down like a landslide, as if a calamity had arrived. Terrifying energy was being released without restraint. That blazing aura and domineering aura descended, causing people's hearts to tremble in fear. The weaker members of the law enforcement team at the bottom of the valley also turned pale. What terrifying strength! I didn't think that Pan Yu would be able to use the Fire Lotus Kill trump card so quickly. This should be his full strength. Can Du Xiaofu still hold on? Du Xiaofu's methods don't seem to be below Pan Yu's, and Du Xiaofu is only at the Pulsation Realm Nirvana Realm. That's insane. Bang, bang, bang. A series of deafening sonic booms continued to resound in the sky above the valley. When the domineering energy and the blazing runes collided with each other, it was as if the entire valley was going to be razed to the ground. The entire space seemed as if it was going to be destroyed and burst open. The extremely violent energy spread out like a tornado sweeping across. Sizzle. When the energy wind spread out a little, Du Xiaofu's figure staggered back in midair. His face started to turn pale, and his breathing became a little chaotic. You are still lacking in terms of cultivation level. There are some things that you have to pay the price for doing. In the aftermath of the violent and domineering energy, as Du Xiaofu's body was pushed back, Pan Yu's figure passed through the barrier of the aftermath of the energy and quickly streaked across the sky. His body was covered in blazing runes, and he appeared in front of Du Xiaofu like a fireball. Whoosh! Pan Yu's calm but sharp gaze swept across. A blazing rune wrapped around Pan Yu's hand and condensed into blazing rune energy. He firmly and violently blasted it toward Du Xiaofu's chest. The rune wings on Du Xiaofu's back flapped, but it was already too late for him to retreat. He could only avoid the vital part of his chest. Bang! However, the former's blazing rune energy still landed on his shoulder. It's impolite not to reciprocate. At this critical moment, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly revealed a cold smile. It was as if he had been prepared for this. A fist print was completely out of Pan Yu's imagination as it blasted out heavily. He's doing this on purpose. Pan Yu was shocked. He didn't expect Du Xiaofu to deliberately resist his attack. His goal was to injure him at the same time. Pan Yu's expression changed drastically, and he immediately retreated in shock. However, the latter was already prepared, and it was too late for him to retreat. Bang! Pan Yu's attack power was extremely tyrannical. After destroying Du Xiaofu's profound qi defense, it directly landed on Du Xiaofu's shoulder. Poochie! This caused Du Xiaofu to spit out a mouthful of blood. His body was once again blown back like a kite with a broken string, after which, he directly collided with the rock cliff that was already not far away behind him. Rumble! The terrifying impact directly caused cracks to appear on the large rock wall. Finally, a large piece of rock collapsed with a loud bang, and the rocks fell down. Du Xiaofu's body fell from the sky to the ground. Finally, he was buried by rocks. Large pieces of rock collapsed, and large pieces of rock collapsed. Bang! Pan Yu's chest also emitted a muffled sound. While retreating, he did not avoid Du Xiaofu's attack. A tyrannical and extremely fierce golden talisman secret pattern surged into his body, and his body was also directly shaken back. After his body retreated dozens of meters away, a trace of dark red blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Damn it! Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Pan Yu floated in the air. His face was filled with anger. He didn't expect that a freshman in front of him would be able to injure him. Energy waves surged around his body. Blazing runes spun like a hurricane, and a blazing and terrifying aura spread out. Pan Yu's expression was ugly. He couldn't help but attack again. He stared at Du Xiaofu, who was covered by a large pile of rocks. He was about to charge and suppress him with anger. Pan Yu, you can't touch him. Seeing that Pan Yu was about to attack again, Du Xiaoman shouted in a tender voice, and her graceful figure soared into the air. Then, she brandished the long sword in her hand, and a sword light swept out. It then converged into a long vortex and directly enveloped Pan Yu. Du Xiaoman, you're not strong enough. Pan Yu was furious. He suddenly attacked. A terrifying blazing rune light beam swooped down with a monstrous force. It fiercely collided with Du Xiaoman's sword net vortex. Rumble! The rune sword net vortex was destroyed. A terrifying energy swept out, and Du Xiaoman's graceful figure suddenly fell. Thud thud. In the end, Du Xiaoman narrowly landed on the ground. She staggered, and the huge impact caused the ground to crack. Her red lips were covered with a dark red color. She was instantly injured by this move. Rumble! The rocks piled up below rumbled and scattered. A rather embarrassed figure in a purple robe flapped his wings and soared into the sky again. There were some bloodstains all over his body. It was Du Xiaofu who had just been smashed down. What a powerful kid. He can still stand up. Looking at the sky above the valley, everyone was shocked. It was beyond their expectations. They didn't expect that Du Xiaofu would not only block Pan Yu's attack, but also injure him. In the end, Du Xiaofu could still stand up. This was too powerful. Looking at Du Xiaofu, who could still stand up and soar into the sky, Pan Yu's eyes were filled with shock. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings and floated in the air. He looked at Du Xiaoman, who was injured in the valley below. His gaze became increasingly sharp and terrifying. He spat out a mouthful of pale golden blood as he stared at Pan Yu. Humph! An arrow at the end of its flight. Pan Yu's eyes twitched. The runes around his body rippled, and a scarlet handprint suddenly slapped towards Du Xiaofu. Whoosh! As soon as this palm was slapped out, it seemed as if the weather in midair had suddenly changed. The palm was completely condensed and enveloped by the glow of talisman markings, causing violent spatial fluctuations to ripple while profound energy surged explosively. In the end, it instantly appeared before Du Xiaofu and suppressed everything in space. Bang! Such a terrifying handprint once again landed on Du Xiaofu's body like a bolt of lightning, suppressing Du Xiaofu until blood spurted from his mouth. At the same time, a chill suddenly swept out from Du Xiaofu's eyes as blood spurted out from his mouth. The corners of his mouth curled into a rather savage smile. All of a sudden, Du Xiaofu's hands reached out at the same time with lightning speed and hugged the former tightly. Not good. Pan Yu didn't expect that Du Xiaofu, who was obviously seriously injured at this moment, would choose to resist him in such a way. He immediately retreated in shock. You shouldn't have hurt my sister. Du Xiaofu was willing to resist a heavy blow, so how could he let Pan Yu escape so easily? He flapped his wings and stepped out with the wave-like, carefree steps. In an instant, he exploded with an even faster speed. The ferocious energy seemed to be able to shatter the space. He directly hugged Pan Yu's legs tightly with a thunder bear hug. Get down! Du Xiaofu shouted. He waved his hands like a ferocious beast roaring. His strength exploded, and immediately, the panicked and shocked Pan Yu directly fell from the sky. Let go! Pan Yu shouted. A terrifying blazing energy rune burst out from his body, trying to shake off Du Xiaofu. However, at this time, Pan Yu's legs were also hugged by Du Xiaofu. His hands and feet were tied. In the panic struggle, the two of them kept colliding with the surrounding cliffs. Bang bang. The two of them rolled and collided, and large pieces of rock cracked and collapsed. Rumble. Their bodies swayed like propellers as they fell from the sky, crashing into the rock walls. Their bodies trembled from the impact, and the rock walls collapsed. A terrifying energy burst out from Pan Yu's body, but Du Xiaofu didn't let go. He forcefully pulled Pan Yu down from the sky. Chapter 239. The two of them struggled violently in midair. The fierce battle between the two of them caused their bodies to roll down the cliff, crashing into the valley at the same time. Bang bang! Large chunks of rock were smashed into pieces by their bodies, and the entire valley shook from their fall. Biffed! Both of them spat out blood at almost the same time. Du Xiaofu still did not let go of Pan Yu's legs. The moment the two of them fell to the ground, Du Xiaofu hugged Pan Yu's legs and rolled like a lazy donkey, crashing into the messy rocks in the valley. Boom boom boom. Ferocious and domineering energy exploded, and the talisman patterns on the surface of his body flickered. Wherever Du Xiaofu's body passed, the rocks were crushed into powder. Bang 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 bang. However, Pan Yu's body was involuntarily hugged by Du Xiaofu and rolled around. His body kept crashing into large chunks of rock, shattering the rocks into pieces. He was in a sorry state, and blood kept flowing out from the corners of his mouth. Let go, Pan Yu shouted, and all the profound qi in his body surged out, trying to shake off Du Xiaofu's hands from his legs. The huge force surged, and Du Xiaofu's arms trembled, but he was like a wild beast, refusing to let go. Bang! Pan Yu's body was violently slammed into a huge boulder. His head slammed into the boulder, causing the boulder to crack and blood to spurt out from his mouth. Too ferocious. The scene before their eyes made everyone in the valley shudder with fear, and a chill ran down their spines. That Du Xiaofu was too terrifying. This was not just ferocious, but a savage pervert. There were not many people present who did not know Pan Yu. He was ranked 31st on the martial roll, and his cultivation level was at the peak of the Pulse Spirit Realm. He had already easily killed Pulse Spirit Realm experts in the outside world. His strength was absolutely terrifying. Who would have thought that at this moment, Pan Yu would be ravaged by Du Xiaofu in such a barbaric and cruel manner? This was too terrifying. Du Xiaofu would not let go of his opponent even if he did not want his own life. This Du Xiaofu must not be provoked. Looking at the ferocious pattern in front of them, the gazes of many trembled violently and their pupils shrunk. It was as if they had seen a ghost. In their hearts, they all decided that they would never provoke this ferocious and abnormal young man in the future. Pan Yu broke down, his head heavily smashing against the huge rock. His body turned sluggish for a moment, and dark red blood spurted out from his mouth. At the same time, he finally found his chance. Bastard, let go of me, let go. Pan Yu bent over and stood up. Terrifying energy erupted from Pan Yu. The blazing runes around his body were like a curtain of light. His profound energy surged to the extreme. A palm print condensed and directly slammed towards Du Xiaofu's head. He was already about to kill Du Xiaofu. So what if I let go of you? Du Xiaofu roared, and the power in his body suddenly erupted. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, he unexpectedly grabbed Pan Yu's legs and flew fiercely towards Ho Luan. Bang! Du Xiaofu let go of Pan Yu's legs, but Pan Yu was sent flying. In an instant, he heavily smashed into the ground in the distance. Rumble! Pan Yu was smashed into the ground, and the ground trembled violently. The pitiful Pan Yu once again spat out blood from his mouth. However, he immediately leaped up at lightning speed, and then floated in the air. He was afraid that Du Xiaofu would grab his legs again, and he would be unable to attack. However, at this time, Pan Yu's body no longer had much of its original elegance. His face was pale, and he looked battered and exhausted. His hair was disheveled, and the corners of his mouth were dripping with blood. Pooey! Du Xiaofu also stood up, spitting out a mouthful of saliva mixed with blood. There was a smile on his face, but that smile made people shudder uncontrollably. Heavens, that's a pervert. Goo goo. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and their hearts were in turmoil. That purple-robed young man was too savage, too perverted. He could be recorded in the annals of Tianwu Academy. Pan Yu's eyes were twitching, and the expression on his face had changed. Since young, he had always been a proud son of the heavens. Even in a place like Tianwu Academy, where geniuses gathered, he still had a standing. The cultivation technique he cultivated was extraordinary, and the runes he comprehended were extraordinary. Everything about him was extraordinary. There were rumors in the outside world that he would be a quasi-king in the future, and he had his own pride and arrogance. But now, in the hands of that purple-robed young man, he had suffered an unprecedented humiliation. He was just a pulsation realm nirvana realm brat, but he couldn't do anything about it. How could he accept this fact? Furthermore, Pan Yu refused to admit that this was a fact. Brat, I have to say that you're strong. Congratulations, you've completely infuriated me. Pan Yu coldly snorted, and he could no longer maintain his calm tone. His handsome face turned malevolent at this moment. Hand seals were formed one after another, and runes shone brightly as he started to connect with his martial vein. In an instant, a dazzling rune light soared into the sky. Walala! All of a sudden, a gigantic, ferocious bird covered in scarlet runes flapped its wings. Its scarlet wings were like flames, and they carried a blazing aura. As it flapped its wings, the flames covered the sky, and its might filled the air, as though it could incinerate everything. That's Pan Yu's bloodline spirit, the blazing demonic bird. It's one of the top-ranked ferocious birds on the Earth Beast list, and it possesses the bloodline of a demonic beast on the Heavenly Beast list. Pan Yu is determined to kill. He's completely infuriated by Du Xiaofu. Pan Yu was trampled on by Du Xiaofu earlier. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. Ku! The blazing demon Osprey's shadow shrieked. Then, under Pan Yu's control, it suddenly enveloped Du Xiaofu. Rumble! The runes intertwined and turned into a sea of fire. Along with the rumbling sound in the valley, it directly suppressed Du Xiaofu. In an instant, the valley trembled violently. More than half of the law enforcement team members below trembled violently. It was impossible for them to withstand the pressure of the blazing demon Osprey's spirit shadow. Du Xiaofu's eyes moved. His current sorry state was even worse than Pan Yu's. Is this the arterial spirit invasion? Looking at Pan Yu connecting with his martial vein, the runes around Du Xiaofu's body began to surge. In an instant, a domineering and terrifying aura erupted like a flash flood. In an instant, the golden light around Du Xiaofu's body soared into the sky. Above his wings, a dazzling golden light burst out, like a rising sun in the sky. Buzz! The domineering and fierce aura suddenly swept out from Du Xiaofu's body. His wings flapped, flowing light overflowed, and majestic light filled the sky. Walala! The blazing demon Osprey suppressed the sky. The blazing runes collapsed and covered the sky. In an instant, it appeared in front of Du Xiaofu, and its terrifying aura fiercely suppressed him. Rock descends to the ninth heaven. Suppress. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings and activated Rock descends to the ninth heaven, carrying the domineering will of the golden-winged Rock clan. The wings flapped and swept across the sky. The wings flapped and closed, domineering and fierce. Golden rays bloomed in the sky, and the airflow whistled in the sky. The momentum was terrifying. Cuckoo! The blazing demon Osprey's shadow shrieked. There was a faint trace of fear in its eyes, but it immediately suppressed its aura. Blazing runes appeared in the sky and converged into a terrifying power. The blazing demon Osprey's shadow continued to suppress Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings like a rock, soaring in the sky. He carried the domineering will of the golden-winged Rock, and it was indestructible. It suppressed the blazing demon Osprey. You want to resist my pulse spirit? You're courting death. Pan Yu shouted coldly. At this time, the aura and carefree aura on his body had changed into a ferocious one. Waves of blazing runes enveloped his body, and his Xian Qi surged like a divine radiance. The aura was terrifying, and together with the pulse spirit, it suppressed Du Xiaofu. Rumble. The two collided like this, and the mysterious runes in the sky bloomed, bright and dazzling. The blazing demon Osprey's aura was astonishing, and it swept across the sky. Pucci. Du Xiaofu resisted with the domineering will of the golden-winged Rock. They suppressed each other, and blood began to flow from the corner of his mouth. After all, his cultivation level was much weaker. The valley trembled violently, as if the entire space above was about to solidify. The mighty energy and aura were boundless. Rumble. The Xian Qi spread out in all directions, and countless rocks fell from the cliff with a rumble. Too powerful. Such an astonishing suppression caused the people below to tremble in fear, and their hair stood on end. Whoosh! Under such suppression, the two finally began to loosen. Then, the space fluctuated violently, and the runes in the sky scattered. At this moment, the air in the valley rumbled, and the space trembled. Rumble. In the end, both of them loosened and exploded at the same time, causing spatial ripples to appear in midair. Finally, amidst a deafening explosion, a large number of energy runes exploded, and an extremely violent power spread out. Whoosh! Below the valley, a large number of rocks were directly destroyed into powder. The aftershock of the energy swept across like a tornado. The blazing runes were broken and dazzling, and the golden runes illuminated the sky. Bang! The rune wings on Du Xiaofu's body turned into broken runes and were destroyed. His body was also forcefully swept down from the sky and violently smashed into the messy valley. His mouth was filled with pale golden blood as he spat out. Whoosh! Pan Yu's body was blasted back, and blood spurted out from the corner of his mouth. His face instantly turned pale. When he stabilized his body, Pan Yu's eyes were filled with astonishment. The terrifying and overbearing aura and willpower on the other party's body were too terrifying. He actually resisted the attack of his pulse spirit. This kind of shock shocked his heart. Du Xiaofu stood up again shakily, and his purple robe sleeves wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His face was slightly solemn. The other party was too strong, and there was no way to deal with him. You're an arrow at the end of its flight. You can't resist anymore. It's time to end this. Pan Yu saw that Du Xiaofu was weak, and was afraid that he didn't have any strength to fight anymore. He didn't want to delay any longer, and his body soared into the sky, and once again directly pounced on Du Xiaofu. The remaining Xian Qi around his body surged, and the runes gathered again. Are you going to go all out? The corners of Du Xiaofu's mouth curled up. He didn't want to expose too much of his pulse spirit, so he could only activate it. Chapter 240. However, after activating the arterial soul, Du Xiaofu knew that no matter what the result was, he would not be able to fight again. He would definitely fall into the hands of the law enforcement team. Brat, go quickly, Du Xiaoman shouted. Her enchanting figure blocked in front of Du Xiaofu. Runes burst out from the spiritual weapon in her hand as she tried to stop Pan Yu. There's a spiritual weapon. It looks delicious. The demon stone's voice sounded in Du Xiaofu's mind. It sounded young and tender as it sensed traces of spiritual weapon fluctuations in the surroundings. Du Xiaoman, you can't stop me, Pan Yu shouted as he swooped down. His aura was still astonishing as his body was covered in light. Du Xiaoman's spiritual weapon longsword trembled as mysterious qi burst out. Elder sister, back off. Du Xiaofu pulled Du Xiaoman away. He knew that his elder sister was also injured. Although Pan Yu was also seriously injured, Pan Yu was already crazy. He was afraid that his elder sister would not be able to stop him. Pan Yu, it's not your turn to behave atrociously here. Suddenly, a soft shout was heard. Qi. Just as the voice was about to be spoken, a figure in the air seemed to be able to penetrate the space and blocked in front of Pan Yu. The person was shrouded in light. It was dazzling and extremely gorgeous, with a demonic aura. Qi. Suddenly, a palm print was shot out from the person's hand. The palm print looked light, but it was extremely fast. It burst out with a powerful pressure, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Pan Yu's expression changed as he immediately shot out a palm print to meet it. Qi La. In the air, the two violent energies collided, but only a slight explosion was heard. Runes burst out, dazzling and resplendent. A majestic and powerful force spread out in the air like a curtain of light, then turned into energy that was annihilated between heaven and earth. Ding ding. At the same time, Pan Yu, who was also extremely weak at the moment, was instantly sent flying. Humph! A muffled groan came from Pan Yu's throat. His face became increasingly pale as his gaze suddenly fell on the person who had just arrived. A young man was floating in the air. He had a smooth and fair face and deep black eyes that were suffused with a red light. Anyone who looked at him would feel their heart tremble. It's Senior Li Yuxiao. Senior Li Yuxiao from our law enforcement team, and the other 3 teams have also made their move. Seeing the young man in the air, the dozens of people in the valley were immediately moved, and their taut heartstrings were immediately released. Li Yuxiao is ranked 15th on the martial roll. As the surrounding discussions rang out, Du Xiaofu also raised his head to look at the sky. Hearing the name Li Yuxiao, Du Xiaofu seemed to recall seeing him when he first entered the academy. He was ranked 15th on the martial roll and was definitely a powerful person. It's the demon extermination sword Li Yuxiao. He cultivates the demon extermination art, which is both good and evil. He's ranked 15th on the martial roll, but if he fully activates the demon extermination art, he might be able to charge into the top 10 of the martial roll. However, if he fully activates the demon extermination art, it will cause extreme side effects to his body. Du Xiaoman whispered to Du Xiaofu, the demon extermination sword Li Yuxiao is also the captain of the law enforcement team's second team. In the entire law enforcement team, the second team is also one of the strongest teams. Almost everyone in the second team is ranked on the martial roll. Li Yuxiao, what do you mean? Seeing Li Yuxiao suddenly appear in the air, Pan Yu's pale face became even more unsightly. There was some fear in his eyes. Li Yuxiao stood in the air, his figure tall and straight. His light red hair draped over his shoulders, and his dark red eyes rippled. There was an indescribable majesty and devilish evil about him. Pan Yu, you won't be able to touch Du Xiaofu this time. Let's go. Li Yuxiao said indifferently as he looked at Pan Yu. You want to protect him? Pan Yu's eyes twitched when he heard this. If Li Yuxiao wanted to protect that brat, it was definitely not good news for him. Whether I protect him or not has nothing to do with you. Li Yuxiao looked at Pan Yu. His dark red eyes moved slightly as he said, you want to deal with Du Xiaofu because Du Xiaofu crippled your cousin called Zhu Qing. I can tell you that even if Du Xiaofu didn't cripple your cousin, I will cripple your blind cousin. Li Yuxiao, what do you mean? Pan Yu's expression immediately darkened. There was confusion in his eyes. He didn't know how Zhu Qing had offended Li Yuxiao. From what he knew, although his cousin was a lecherous trash, he had the ability to steer according to the wind. He definitely wouldn't dare to provoke Li Yuxiao. Humph. Hearing this, Li Yuxiao snorted and said, because your blind cousin, Zhu Qing, attacked that in-name student Sunji. He is also my cousin. Now that that blind thing has been crippled, he got off easy. If he falls into my hands, I'll kill them all. What? Hearing this, Pan Yu's expression changed. He had already found out the cause of this matter. It was because he had stolen points from a student. However, Pan Yu didn't expect that student to be the terrifying Du Xiaofu. It was one thing for him to stand up for Du Xiaofu, but he was also the cousin of the demon blade Li Yuxiao. Just as Li Yuxiao had said, even if Du Xiaofu didn't make a move, Li Yuxiao wouldn't have let him off. If he fell into Li Yuxiao's hands, given Li Yuxiao's personality, he wouldn't let him live. The only difference was that Li Yuxiao wouldn't kill him in the academy. He would find an opportunity to do so outside the academy. At that time, the academy wouldn't be able to do anything to him. So Old Four has such a terrifying cousin. The conversation in the air was clearly heard by the crowd below. Among the astonished crowd, Du Xiaofu was the most surprised. He didn't expect Old Four to have such a terrifying cousin in Tianwu Academy. It was no wonder Old Four said that he had many ways to take revenge. However, he wanted to keep it for himself. Pan Yu, listen up. Du Xiaofu is being hunted down by you because of my cousin, Sunji. I owe him a favor. If you dare to touch him, I'll make a move on you. If you dare to touch the people around him, I won't let you off either. Li Yuxiao stared at Pan Yu coldly. Are you threatening me? Pan Yu's face darkened and turned ashen. He was fearful of Li Yuxiao, but he seemed to have some sort of backing in his heart. I know that fellow owes you a favor, but don't think that he's your backing, Li Yuxiao said solemnly. The corners of Pan Yu's eyes twitched. He looked at Li Yuxiao and asked, Are you going to protect that brat for the rest of his life? No one can protect another forever. I will only protect him once. This is what I owe him. Whatever you do in the future has nothing to do with me. However, if you dare to provoke me, don't blame me for being impolite. Li Yuxiao said solemnly. All right, I'll give you face today. After Pan Yu finished speaking to Li Yuxiao, he looked down at Du Xiaofu below. The coldness in his eyes was undisguised as he said, Brat, consider yourself lucky today. The next time I see you, it will be when you become a cripple. So, Pan Yu gritted his teeth and soared into the sky with a hint of unwillingness in his eyes. Pan Yu saw the current situation. Even if he was at his peak, he couldn't do anything to Li Yuxiao, let alone now. Moreover, there were other people here. If they really fought, both sides would suffer. It was better to leave first. He was heavily injured and exhausted. He wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Looking at Pan Yu's departing figure, Li Yuxiao's eyes flickered. He withdrew his gaze from the sky and landed in the valley. Greetings, Senior Li. Everyone in the valley bowed respectfully. Li Yuxiao strode forward and arrived in front of Du Xiaofu. He nodded to Du Xiaoman and said, Senior Du, are you here to capture him or to help him? Du Xiaoman asked Li Yuxiao. This? Li Yuxiao was slightly stunned. Du Xiaofu looked at Li Yuxiao and smiled. No matter what, I have to thank you for your help. Hearing this, Li Yuxiao's gaze fell on Du Xiaofu. He carefully studied him for a while, and his eyes flickered. However, he quickly restrained himself and said to Du Xiaofu, You did this for my cousin. I owe you a favor. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said, That's not right. Sun Ji is my brother. I only helped him get justice. It has nothing to do with you. You don't owe me a favor. Interesting. Li Yuxiao looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled. His dark red hair fluttered in the wind. The red light in his eyes made people not dare to look him in the eye. He said, My cousin asked me to help you. I had no choice but to agree. After a short pause, Li Yuxiao looked at Du Xiaofu and continued, But I'm helping you this time because I'm also here to arrest you. As a member of the enforcement team, I have a duty. But if I deal with you now, it would be unfair to you and to my cousin. So I'll give you 1 day. In 1 day, no one from the enforcement team will come after you. You can run as far as you can. After 1 day, I'll personally hunt you down, and when we meet again, I won't hold back. If I don't kill you, I will be there. Du Xiaofu didn't refuse. He couldn't refuse. He looked at Du Xiaoman and said, Sister, you have to be careful of Li Yuxiao. I seem to have caused trouble for you. He can't touch me, Du Xiaoman said. Li Yuxiao doesn't dare to touch a member of the law enforcement team. He doesn't have the guts. Hearing this, Li Yuxiao interrupted. Yes. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was slightly relieved. He continued to say to Du Xiaoman, There is something I need you to do for me. What is it? Du Xiaoman frowned as she looked at the purple-robed young man's deep eyes that were dripping with blood. She didn't know what to do. Chapter 241. Help me tell Ouyang Shuang that I'm fine. Du Xiaofu didn't ask his elder sister about Dai Xingyu and the king-scaled demonic tiger situation. In any case, he wouldn't know even if she asked. However, since Ouyang Shuang had returned to Tianwu Academy, Dai Xingyu and Little Tiger shouldn't be in any danger. All right. Du Xiaoman nodded her head and her eyes flickered. She turned to Du Xiaofu and said, "Do you still intend to escape? Return with me and take it as an admission of your mistake. I will plead for leniency on your behalf and ensure that you will only receive some punishment. If you continue to escape and get caught, the consequences will be different. At the very least, you will be severely punished. At the very least, you will be killed. At the very least, you will be crippled." A bitter smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's pale face as he said to Du Xiaoman, "If someone likes to chase after me, I'll just run. I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I admit my mistake? Elder sister, I will be fine. Don't worry." So, as soon as he finished his words, the profound qi beneath Du Xiaofu's feet surged. He immediately left with the unfettered steps and disappeared from the valley. "Senior Li, why did you let that brat go? He is a wanted criminal on the bounty board." Bing Qianli, who had been helped up by his team members, continued to walk forward with the help of the law enforcers. After seeing Du Xiaofu's figure disappear, he said to Li Yuxiao. His aura was extremely weak, and his appearance could only be described as miserable. "Didn't you hear what I said? No one is allowed to chase after him for a day." Li Yuxiao glanced at Bing Qianli and said, "Furthermore, if you chase after him, you will only be courting death. It's not that that brat doesn't dare to kill. Since he has already killed 2 of you, you don't have the strength to do so. So stop thinking about him. If you annoy him and lose your lives, you can only blame yourselves." "Yes." Hearing this, all the members of the law enforcement team immediately nodded in embarrassment and did not dare to speak again. Du Xiaoman's brows were tightly knitted together and her expression was grave. After a long while, she lazily smiled and combed through her hair. There was a trace of a smile at the corner of her mouth, but she didn't say anything. She only quietly watched in the direction that the purple-robed youth had left. "Du Xiaofu, why didn't you let me eat that spirit tool? I can feel that it's not ordinary. It's better than the spirit tool I ate last time. Your strength is still not enough. You can't even resist that guy. Actually, when that guy activated his pulse spirit, you should have activated your own pulse spirit. If I was in a good mood, I might have helped you a little and gotten rid of that guy's pulse spirit." Inside the dense forest, Du Xiaofu was running at full speed. Although Pan Yu had left, that didn't mean that he wouldn't chase after him. Therefore, he didn't dare to stop. Demon Stone's voice kept talking. That strange voice seemed to be coming from Du Xiaofu's mind. "You only know how to make sarcastic remarks. When I was fighting with him, I didn't see you helping me." Du Xiaofu scolded as he ran. Demon Stone said, "You didn't ask me for help. Besides, I can't help you now. But after I break through, if I'm happy, I can help you a little. Then let's talk about it after you break through. I have to find a safe place to heal first," Du Xiaofu said. At this time, he was covered in scars and exhausted. Now that he was gloriously listed on the bounty list, he was afraid that it would attract a lot of people who would be interested in the bounty points. If he randomly met a senior, he estimated that he wouldn't be able to compete with him. Therefore, he had to recover as soon as possible. Du Xiaofu was most worried that Li Yunxiao would catch up with him after one day. If he met Li Yuxiao, Du Xiaofu estimated that he wouldn't be a match for him even if he was in his peak condition. That guy's strength was probably much more terrifying than Pan Yu's. As for Pan Yu, Du Xiaofu was worried that guy would catch up with him. However, he also estimated that the guy was now exhausted and heavily injured like him. In addition, there was Li Yuxiao's deterrence. Therefore, even if Pan Yu wanted to kill him, he would definitely wait until he recovered. "You're being chased by so many people. You should find a place to heal first. Don't drag me down with you." Demon Stone poured oil on Du Xiaofu's fire. Suddenly, the rather tender voice paused for a moment. The voice suddenly sounded in Du Xiaofu's mind. "Du Xiaofu, go to the right." Don't go to the front. Du Xiaofu's figure suddenly stopped in the middle of the dense forest. Looking through the gaps between the leaves, he saw that the right side was a mountain range. Without the cover of the dense forest, it was probably even more dangerous. He asked, "Why go to the right?" "I feel the aura of spiritual herbs on the right side. The aura is very weak and difficult to detect. However, I am sure that there are spiritual herbs there, and there should be a lot of them. In short, the aura is very strange. There are spiritual herbs, and there are a lot of them." Du Xiaofu frowned. At this time, his injuries were extremely serious and he was exhausted. He didn't know how far he could run. More importantly, he could encounter danger at any time. After hesitating for a moment, he took out Demon Stone and asked, "Can you feel how far it is?" "After crossing a few mountains, we should be there. The aura there is very strange, but there must be spiritual herbs. I am sure that it is a good place." Demon Stone's eyes were faintly discernible as it spoke to Du Xiaofu with a rather confident tone. "Anyway, it is not far. Let's go." Du Xiaofu made up his mind. Anyway, the dense forest was not safe. Maybe there would be an unexpected discovery ahead. Maybe it would be safer then. Gritting his teeth and stamping his feet, Du Xiaofu took out a handful of spiritual herbs from his chinkuan bag and stuffed them into his mouth. He then wolfed them down. "Give me some." Feeling the aura of spiritual herbs, Demon Stone suddenly shouted, "Didn't you say that there are spiritual herbs ahead? When we find them, we will split them in half. You can eat whatever you want." Du Xiaofu said, and then directly rushed out of the dense forest, looking at the mountains on the right side. "Du Xiaofu, you stingy guy. You are just afraid that I will eat your spiritual herbs." Demon Stone loudly protested. "What do you know? I am diligent and thrifty. It is a good tradition." Du Xiaofu did not care about his stinginess. He said to Demon Stone, "Since you are so generous, you can give me all the spiritual herbs you find later. Don't take them. Forget it. You should be diligent and thrifty. In the future, don't think about my portion of spiritual herbs." Demon Stone said, "I think I should give you a name. Since you are Demon Stone, I will call you Little Demon." Du Xiaofu fled, his figure flitting across the mountain range. His speed was so fast that it was hard to see him clearly. He did not dare to waste any time. "I feel that I am a divine stone and not a demon stone. Can you call me Stone God?" Demon Stone said, "You were drenched in the urine of a cow. Why don't I call you Urine God?" Du Xiaofu said, "Air." Demon Stone was stunned. Then, he said to Du Xiaofu, "Little demon it is. I won't be picky." In the square of Tianwu Academy, in front of a towering jade wall, the name Du Xiaofu appeared on the 88th name on the ranking list. 88th name, Du Xiaofu. What is this fellow trying to do? In front of the jade wall, a peerless beauty stood. She had long and slender legs, a curvy figure, and a seductive figure. Coupled with her already peerless beauty, she was simply captivating. The peerless beauty stood there quietly, causing many youths in the square to be reluctant to shift their gazes away. They wanted to take a few more glances at her, but they did not dare to look directly at her. "You don't know, but that fellow is too ferocious. He killed 2 seniors, crippled 3 of them, arrested the enforcement team, and stole many chinkuan bags. The enforcement team has been searching for him for so many days, but they are still unable to do anything to him." Beside the peerless beauty, a delicate girl spoke. She was LV Joshua. That little bastard. The woman's delicate face was dignified. She raised her head and looked at the 86th name on the jade wall in front of her with hatred. Then, she looked at the second name on the bounty list and murmured softly, "What a pair of father and son. It's really the new generation surpassing the old. Each wave is higher than the previous." "What are you muttering about?" LV Joshua asked Ouyang Shuang. The beautiful tight-fitting girl was Ouyang Shuang, who had just returned to the academy. "Nothing much." Ouyang Shuang snapped out of her daze and said to LV Joshua, "Joshua, help me keep an eye out for any news. I have to make a trip to the Talisman Institute." "All right, I'll look for you if there's any news." LV Joshua nodded. "Thank you." Ouyang Shuang nodded and left immediately. She had just returned to Tianwu Academy and was about to ask someone if Du Xiaofu had come to Tianwu Academy. However, the first thing she heard was that the entire academy was discussing Du Xiaofu. The entire academy was paying close attention to him. After learning about the entire incident, Ouyang Shuang could only smile bitterly. Killing 2 seniors, crippling 3 of them, and arresting the enforcement team. This was the first time she heard of someone in the academy daring enough to do so. Mountains stood tall and dangerous. Jagged rocks of grotesque shapes could be seen everywhere. It was a barren land. Little demon, is this the place where you said there are spiritual herbs? On the mountain top, Du Xiaofu had an ugly expression on his face. How was this a place where spiritual herbs could be found? The surrounding mountains were barren, and there wasn't even the slightest fluctuation of spiritual herbs. There wasn't even a trace of spiritual herbs. It can't be wrong. You have to believe in my talent. This is the place. There are fluctuations of spiritual herbs. Little Demon said with certainty. Even now, he was still certain. Du Xiaofu looked at the surroundings. The barren heaven and earth energy in the surroundings were extremely weak. There didn't seem to be any spiritual herbs here. Even if there were, there wouldn't be any spiritual herbs here. He glared at Little Demon and said, "If you dare to lie to me, I'll let you taste the piss of a virgin boy." Chapter 242. Du Xiaofu, do you know that you are very vulgar and have low tastes? The little demon said angrily as it looked around. Then, the golden runes on its body started to fluctuate. Golden light started to spread out from its faintly discernible and illusory eyes. Then, it suddenly said in surprise, "Haha, I was wondering how I could sense it wrong. It turns out that there is a combination of an illusory formation and a seal. No wonder it was hard to discover." This is the illusory formation and the seal? Du Xiaofu looked around in surprise. He was also a spiritual talisman master, but he did not sense it at all. Of course, if it wasn't for my talent, it would have been hard to discover. If I had walked in, I'm afraid I would have been trapped and wouldn't be able to get out. The little demon said proudly. This was its absolute talent. It said, "I can sense that the elixir is inside the illusory formation and the seal. What are you so happy about? With the illusory formation and the seal, we can't go in." Du Xiaofu stared at the little demon and said, if he could not sense the illusory formation and the seal, there was naturally no way to break it. Moreover, even if he had the ability to break it, he did not have the time and strength to break the illusory formation and the seal. The little demon stared at Du Xiaofu and said, "What do you know? Have you forgotten? Ordinary seals and talisman formations are useless against me. I can go in and out as I wish." Then what should I do? Hearing this, Du Xiaofu subconsciously held the little demon tightly with both hands. "You can't go in now. How would I know what to do? Why don't you bring me outside and I'll bring some elixir for you to eat?" The little demon said to Du Xiaofu. "No." Du Xiaofu shook his head and said to the little demon, "I don't believe you. You have to bring me in. Otherwise, you will definitely eat all the elixir inside. If you don't bring me in, don't even think about going in." Du Xiaofu really didn't trust the little demon in this matter. For the little demon, once it ate the elixirs, not even dregs would be left behind. "Du Xiaofu, you bastard. You pinched me so hard that it hurts. How dare you worry about me? How shameless." Little Yao shouted out, his childish voice filled with protest. It's better to be safe than sorry. Du Xiaofu did not care about the small demon's protests at all. "All right, I'll bring you in." The little demon glared at Du Xiaofu and said, "Activate your meridian soul and hide inside it. Then, I will lend you a hand. At that time, we will be able to enter this illusion formation and seal together without anyone knowing." "All right." There was a smile on Du Xiaofu's pale face. Then, he raised his eyebrows and said, "In that case, if I go inside, I won't have to be afraid of the pursuers outside, right?" "Of course. I feel that this seal and talisman array are very powerful. Most people would not be able to enter," Little Yao said. Chi-la-la. After a while, the talisman around Du Xiaofu's body flashed. He communicated with the martial vein, and the talisman spread. Behind him, the phantom of a 5-fingered mountain spread out. The phantom of the mountain grew and evolved behind Du Xiaofu. Dense spiritual qi spread out and communicated with the energy of heaven and earth. A terrifying power spread out, as if it was given life. Then, it gradually enveloped his body. Suddenly, his whole body was shrouded under the phantom of the mountain. Phew! At the same time, on the surface of the little demon's body, golden talisman patterns flashed. There were also other colors of light spreading out. The colors were colorful and finally spread on the phantom of the mountain around Du Xiaofu. The two seemed to be able to merge completely. The mysterious area was full of lush green. The mountains were connected, and the energy of heaven and earth was shockingly rich. It was like a fog that wrapped around the waist of the mountain. The mountains and rivers meandered, and the bottom was clear blue. The spiritual mountains on both sides were graceful and welcoming. The mountain range was continuous, but as far as the eye could see, it was surrounded by clouds and mist. The mountain path was winding, like a ribbon floating down from the clouds. The shadowy mountains were covered with a thin gauze like cicadas' wings, faintly discernible in the clouds. On the ground, multicolored light filled the air. There were countless exotic flowers and herbs. Qila, there was a fluctuation in the space. There was a strange energy that seemed to be able to distort the void. Then, a phantom of a mountain covered with talisman patterns appeared out of thin air. Finally, the talisman patterns disappeared, and a young man in a purple robe was revealed. When the young man looked around and saw the scene that appeared in front of him, he was suddenly stunned. The young man saw that he was already in a colorful world. The multicolored light spread, and the flowing light overflowed. There were exotic flowers and herbs everywhere, and the hillside was full of spiritual herbs. A strong medicinal fragrance assailed his nostrils. In this world, the mountain peaks were connected, the clouds and mist were faintly discernible, and the energy of heaven and earth was rich. It was like a dream, like an illusory world. Even the grass on the ground and the stones on the ground were crystal clear and rippling with multicolored light. Spiritual herbs, there were spiritual herbs everywhere, and the rich and astonishing fluctuations were spreading out. The medicinal fragrance was very tempting. Everywhere one looked, there were spiritual herbs. It was as if they had come to a world of spiritual herbs. Spiritual herbs, it's all spiritual herbs. This is enough to eat. There won't be a problem if I eat until I'm full. In the hands of the young man in a purple robe, there was a mountain stone that spoke. It had eyes and a mouth, and it was very mysterious. What is this place? Why are there so many spiritual herbs? Du Xiaofu was completely shocked at this moment. In this space, he felt that the spiritual energy was very strong, and even the Xin Qi in his body was flowing faster. The air was filled with the smell of spiritual herbs. Just by smelling a few more times, one would be able to get benefits. Could this be the Academy's medicine field? Du Xiaofu murmured. He didn't know if he had heard that the Academy had its own medicine field, and there was a registered student association that was responsible for the care and cultivation of spiritual herbs. Who cares where this place is? We're only responsible for eating spiritual herbs. Little Demon said, looking very excited. He said to Du Xiaofu, "Remember our agreement? You'll take half, and I'll take half. You can't steal from me." "There's so much. Why would I steal from you?" Du Xiaofu said. He bent down and pulled out a spiritual herb that was emitting multicolored light and stuffed it into his stomach. Eating a little was a great supplement, and he definitely couldn't waste it. So what if it was the Academy's? There were so many spiritual herbs. As long as he wasn't caught, it would be fine. Du Xiaofu said in his heart. So what if the Academy knew that he had stolen the spiritual herbs? Anyway, the law enforcement team was looking for him everywhere, and he was also on the bounty list. Why should he be polite with the Academy? Causing trouble was trouble, and causing trouble was also trouble. Useless guy. These are all low-level spiritual herbs that haven't matured yet. You won't get much effect from eating them for a lifetime. I feel the aura of precious herbs in front. That's the real treasure. Little Demon said. His illusory eyes were shining with golden light. At this moment, he was very excited. Precious herbs. Where are the precious herbs? Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up when he heard this. Precious herbs. They were really precious treasures. As a spiritual talisman master, he had received a lot of guidance from Zhen Qingchun on spiritual herbs. Du Xiaofu naturally knew the origin of precious herbs. Precious herbs, to the outside world, were treasures that only existed in legends. It was said that precious herbs had the terrifying effect of reviving the dead, regenerating flesh and bones, and giving spring to withered trees. It was completely beyond spiritual herbs. After some top spiritual herbs matured, if one was lucky enough to obtain an opportunity, they might be able to advance to the level of spiritual herbs. It was said that precious herbs were the main ingredients for refining the legendary pills. I feel the aura of precious herbs in front. Let's go quickly. Little Demon urged Du Xiaofu. He was even more anxious than Du Xiaofu. He was already drooling. Because he felt the aura of precious herbs, he didn't have much interest in the spiritual herbs in the surroundings. Okay, let's go quickly. Du Xiaofu nodded. Then, following the direction indicated by Little Demon, he immediately rushed forward. What a huge spiritual herb field. It's really terrifying. Along the way, they crossed over mountains. Wherever Du Xiaofu went, there were spiritual herbs everywhere, no matter if it was a mountain peak or a beach, or a rock crevice or a beach. Multicolored light spread out, and the spiritual energy fluctuation was astonishing. It was like floating clouds, colorful, and flowing light overflowed. It was dreamy and illusory like a mythical world. Along the way, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but pull out a lot of spiritual herbs and stuff them into his mouth. The deeper he went, the higher the quality of the spiritual herbs. In the end, Little Demon couldn't bear it anymore. He shouted and swallowed a few spiritual herbs that were glistening with multicolored light. Only then did he leave. If it wasn't because he felt the aura of precious herbs, he probably wouldn't leave until he was full. Along the way, Du Xiaofu was worried that he might meet someone here. However, in the end, he found that there was no one here at all. Aside from spiritual herbs, there was still a world full of spiritual herbs. This was the world of spiritual herbs. After half an hour, in the valley between two mountain peaks, the surroundings were lush and green. There were spiritual herbs and strange flowers, good wood, and neon stones. In the middle, there was a piece of soil that spread out with multicolored light. This soil was extremely strange. The multicolored light spread out like smoke, but not a single blade of grass grew. However, there was a strange spiritual tree that was almost as tall as a person. The spiritual tree that was as tall as a person was also very strange. It was the size of a small bowl, and its branches and leaves were sparse like bamboo. However, it had thick branches and large leaves. Its entire body was green and crystal clear. The multicolored light spread out, and it was dazzling. At the top of the tree, there was a spiritual fruit that was the size of a baby's fist. Its entire body was white and green, and runes spread out. These runes were extremely special. It seemed to spread out a special kind of fluctuation, and it was as if there was a kind of Tao rhythm. Walala! Looking at the spiritual fruit that alternated between white and green from afar, one could feel a terrifying fluctuation rippling out. The rich medicinal fragrance soared into the sky and rippled in the air. Chapter 243. Green Bamboo Spirit Fruit. That's a treasure medicine. The treasure medicine is the green bamboo spirit fruit. Looking at the spirit fruit in the distance, the little demon couldn't help but exclaim excitedly, "Kid, you can't let go of the green bamboo spirit fruit. This is a great opportunity. Don't let that godstone eat it. It's better to give it to you than to let it eat it." At this moment, a familiar voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears. It was Zhen Qingchuan's voice. "Little demon, there's a strong person coming." Suddenly, Du Xiaofu said to the little demon in his hand, and turned around slightly. "Where? Let's hide for a while. I must eat that treasure medicine. I can't help it," the little demon said immediately. Shoo! Before the little demon's voice could finish, it was violently thrown into the distance by Du Xiaofu. It was like an impact cannon. "Du Xiaofu, you shameless human. I understand now. You want to take the treasure medicine for yourself." The little demon's tender voice traveled further and further. After being thrown by Du Xiaofu for a few hundred meters, it disappeared with a swoosh. Hurry up and take the treasure medicine. Otherwise, the little demon won't let it go. After throwing the little demon behind, Du Xiaofu rushed towards the spirit fruit in front of him. There was only one green bamboo spirit fruit. There was no way to split it equally. Looking at the little demon's excited and drooling face, Du Xiaofu knew that the little demon wouldn't give it to him. Therefore, it was better to use the simplest method, which was to eat it into his stomach first. Brother Qingchun, you're finally awake? How do you feel? Du Xiaofu ran towards the spirit fruit and asked Jin Qingchun. I'm fine. Where's this place? Why is there a green bamboo spirit fruit? Zhen Qingchuan's voice came from the small pagoda in Du Xiaofu's arms. He said, I can feel your current aura. You seem to be in a terrible state. Could it be that you got into some big trouble again? It's a long story. I'll tell you when the time comes. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. In just a few steps, he leaped onto the soil where the multicolored light was spreading. He was almost in front of the green bamboo spirit fruit. Halala! The closer he got, the stronger the medicinal fragrance became. Astonishing energy fluctuations rippled out. Du Xiaofu. Shameless Du Xiaofu. I want to eat that precious medicine. Let go of me. A tender voice sounded. At this moment, the small demon, who had been tricked by Du Xiaofu earlier, was currently wrapped in mysterious symbol patterns. Its entire body was like flowing light as it rapidly rolled on the ground, catching up with Du Xiaofu at a frightening speed. At this moment, the small demon's speed seemed to be much faster than Du Xiaofu's. Jin Qingchun seemed to have sensed that the small demon was rapidly catching up. He immediately urged Du Xiaofu, Kid, hurry up. That divine stone is catching up. You must obtain the green bamboo spirit fruit. If you can eat that precious medicine, it will be of great use to you. This is a great opportunity. Du Xiaofu increased his speed and leaped with all his might. He finally got close to the green bamboo spirit fruit. He stomped on the ground and leaped forward. He directly grabbed the green bamboo spirit fruit, which was emitting a medicinal fragrance and contained astonishing energy. Shameless Du Xiaofu, don't even think about getting rid of me. The tender voice sounded in Du Xiaofu's ears. At this moment, the small demon's speed had reached a terrifying level. With a swoosh, it directly passed by Du Xiaofu's face. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's feet left the ground and his hand was about to grab the green bamboo spirit fruit. Chi! A golden ray of light rushed out and the small demon directly collided with Du Xiaofu's palm. A huge impact force immediately repelled Du Xiaofu's hand. Bang! The huge impact force caused Du Xiaofu's hand to go numb. His palm was in pain and his hand was also repelled. Haha! Shameless Du Xiaofu, you can't steal the green bamboo spirit fruit. Ah! After repelling Du Xiaofu's palm, the small demon immediately laughed happily. However, before it could finish its sentence, its laughter suddenly turned into a roar. It shouted loudly, Du Xiaofu, you bastard, don't. In the blink of an eye, Du Xiaofu's hand was repelled. However, his feet left the ground and his body was in the air. He used the momentum to tilt his body and then opened his mouth. A suction force immediately sucked the crystal-clear green bamboo spirit fruit into his mouth. There was no time to see what the green bamboo spirit fruit looked like. Du Xiaofu directly took a bite. He only felt that the green bamboo spirit fruit turned into a gentle and comfortable liquid with a fragrance and sweetness. It slid down his throat and then into his stomach. Bastard, Du Xiaofu, you are too shameless, too shameless. Spit out the precious medicine for me. The small demon roared and went berserk. Its body was wrapped in light golden talisman patterns. It was like a rubber ball that kept bouncing on the multicolored soil. It was completely in a berserk state. I've already eaten it. How can I spit it out for you? All right, I won't fight with you for any of the elixirs here. You can eat them however you want. How about it? Du Xiaofu smiled with satisfaction. Finally, he managed to swallow the elixir. It was so close to falling into the little demon's mouth. How can other elixirs be compared to the precious medicine? Even the golden plum can't be compared. You shameless bastard. You just want to steal my elixirs. The human heart is sinister. Humans are treacherous and cunning. It's too disadvantageous to be with you humans. I don't want to be with you anymore." The small demon went berserk. Its young and tender voice was roaring nonstop. It didn't expect Du Xiaofu to be so shameless. He directly threw it aside and then snatched the precious medicine. This was simply insanely shameless. "Don't be angry. At most, the next time I see a precious medicine, I will definitely let you eat it," Du Xiaofu said a little embarrassedly. He felt that he was a little embarrassed about his rude behavior just now. "Do you think precious medicines are everywhere? Next time? There won't be a next time. I won't bring you to look for elixirs again. I shouldn't have brought you here. My precious medicine." The little demon was driven mad. It secretly swore in its heart that it would never bring this deranged Du Xiaofu to look for spiritual herbs again. It shouldn't have brought this guy in just now. If it didn't bring this shameless guy in just now, it would be the one eating the treasured herbs right now. Oh no, why is it so berserk? Suddenly, Du Xiaofu's complexion changed greatly. The energy that the green bamboo spirit fruit had transformed into was extremely docile. However, once it reached his stomach, it transformed into an extremely ferocious energy that spread out. The violent energy was like a ferocious beast that had awakened and immediately rushed back and forth in his body. Du Xiaofu was seriously injured and exhausted. At this time, the berserk energy of the green bamboo spirit fruit spread out in his body. The berserk energy of the green bamboo spirit fruit could only be described as terrifying. Rumble. The energy of the green bamboo spirit fruit was rampaging in Du Xiaofu's body. An intense pain suddenly attacked again and again. The berserk energy seemed to want to destroy everything. If it wasn't for Du Xiaofu's body being extremely tough, he was afraid that his body would have exploded and he would have died. Walala! The berserk energy of the green bamboo spirit fruit in his body spread out on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body. His body swelled, and there were fluctuations of green bamboo spirit fruit. Waves of berserk energy wandered on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body, wanting to break out of his body. At this time, Du Xiaofu's body was glistening with light. His whole body was filled with multicolored light, and a medicinal fragrance spread out. "It smells so good. It's like the smell of the green bamboo spirit fruit. I really want to eat you. You crazy guy. I'll let you eat the green bamboo spirit fruit raw. You'll be stuffed to death." When the small demon saw Du Xiaofu's appearance, it immediately vented a lot of its anger. Its illusory eyes looked at Du Xiaofu, who was filled with multicolored light and medicinal fragrance. It faintly looked like it was drooling. As the berserk energy in his body spread out, even with his strong body, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but cry out. The berserk energy of the green bamboo spirit fruit seemed like it was going to destroy his body. The energy was unimaginably huge. "Kid, I let you get the green bamboo spirit fruit, but I didn't let you eat it raw. For a Pulsation Realm martial artist to eat a green bamboo spirit fruit raw, you should be considered the first in history." Zhen Qingquan's voice came out. He hurriedly said to Du Xiaofu, "Hurry up and cultivate. Refine the energy in your body. Hurry." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu couldn't care less. He immediately sat down cross-legged under the green bamboo spirit fruit tree and formed a cultivation hand seal. He circulated the cultivation method of the golden-winged great Peng bird race and directly began to refine the energy. Rumble. The berserk energy in his body was still surging like 10,000 beasts, causing the space around him to tremble. Du Xiaofu endured the intense pain in his body. He gritted his teeth and began to cultivate. He began to refine the berserk energy. As the sun set, the silver-gray evening dew began to slowly envelop the mountain range. In the quaint courtyard, Ouyang Shuang's beautiful figure stood quietly. She couldn't hide her sexy figure. She looked at the handsome middle-aged man holding a folding fan in front of her and said, "Uncle Shi, that guy is already on the bounty list. If you don't help him, then no one can help him." "You're asking me to help him?" The handsome middle-aged man closed the folding fan in his hand. His slender figure slightly straightened. Although he was middle-aged, it didn't affect his handsomeness. Instead, it made him look even more charming. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. His eyes were like water as he looked at Ouyang Shuang and said, "Girl, do you know what that little brat did? How do you want me to help him?" Ouyang Shuang looked at the handsome middle-aged man. Her big eyes rippled. She bit her red lips and said softly, "Uncle Shi, I know that he went overboard. However, I understand what happened. It's not entirely his fault. Moreover, this time, my parents asked me to look after him. If something happens to him, I won't be able to go back and explain it to my parents. Uncle Shi, if you don't give me face, then give my parents face and help that little brat." Thank you, ninefold spiritual emperor commander, for the great reward of 160,000. Thank you. There are still 2 more chapters to go. Xiao Yu is working hard.